time, I'd like to introduce you to a few people. First off, I would like to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Gabriel Trujillo. I'd also like to introduce governing board members Crystal Foster and Ms. Layla Counts. I would also like to introduce interim Assistant Superintendent Dr. Charlotte Patterson, who has steered this committee and steered this process. At this time, I'll introduce you to the Family Life Curriculum Committee. First, Ms. Bernadette Gruber. Adam Reagan. Stephanie Hamilton. Dr. Ravi Gravo Shaw. Did I say that correctly, sir?
Close enough.
Close enough. I've been practicing all afternoon. And Cindy Coleman. I'd like to take just a second to remind you of the process. I realize that when we say family life curriculum, this stirs a lot of emotions, a lot of passions, a lot of opinions, a lot of feelings. There's three things, though, I'd like to ask of you tonight. The first one is to listen. The second is to be courteous. And the third is to extend all of our speakers respect. We're going to get through as many people as we can. We want to hear as many opinions as we possibly can. You will have 3 minutes. We're going to stick very closely to that 3 minutes. So we'd like you to come up when your name is called and go ahead and address the committee. At the end of 90 minutes, we will give some response time to our committee members. So that's the plan, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Dan, interpreter. Do we have him? Yes, Martin, right here.
And if you got. Does anybody need an interpreter? Okay, and I'm gonna, I guess that was foolish to say in English. I want you to know my first language wasn't English either, it was German. I had a German grandfather, but no German interpreters either.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Martín Cosa, intérprete del distrito. Aquí presente mi compañera Mirna Quesada. Si alguien necesita servicios de interpretación en español, con mucho gusto le podemos hacer el equipo necesario. Gracias.
And please excuse me with names. Our first speaker is Legu Berkey. Berkey? Oh, I'm sorry. Lee Berkey. Ms. Berkey, please forgive me.
It's quite all right. It's not responsible for the spelling. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for calling me up first, because I've lost what I wanted to say. I've been a social worker and a counselor in Tucson Unified for almost 20 years, and back in New York City for 10 years prior to that. I'm also the mother of a junior at University High School. I have taught health, and in health I taught sexual health component back at the old Project Moore. And one of my concerns is, and I understand that abstinence is absolutely the only 100% way to prevent any number of issues, including pregnancy and STIs and emotional health issues, but it's it's not what I think I think we should stress it, but I think we need to provide more comprehensive information because knowledge is power. And when we are sending our kids out there, we know a lot of our students are sexually active. I worked at the Teenage Parent High School for 8 of the last 9 years here in Tucson. They get pregnant again, and the curriculum doesn't go much beyond talking about these are forms of birth control and contraception, and I think we need to have a more thoughtful dialogue with our students. Teenagers are rash. Giving them that information is not going to make them want to have sex. I run substance abuse prevention groups here, which started this past year, and in giving the students they need to know about substance abuse, we're not encouraging them to engage in substance abuse. We are giving them the knowledge they need to make better choices. I feel like our current curriculum is a bit shaming in the way it addresses, because it focuses on heterosexual marriage between men and women. There's nothing out there that addresses relationships in general, in particular within the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender communities. And we need to do that. We have a responsibility to do that. I would also like to say, and I know it is not popular, but as a social worker, I know we're not supposed to talk about pregnancy termination, but I think if we are going to have a conversation with kids about what happens when a student becomes pregnant, if we are going to talk about attempting to parent as a teenager or placing a child for adoption, we have to say that all three are options, and hopefully they're not in that position because we're going to give them the information they need to prevent pregnancy. Thank you.
Dr. Jeff Couchman. Diana Wilson.
Hi, I'm here as the parent of a TUSD student in the high schools and also as an involved community member. And I just wanted to thank the committee for their very, very hard and dedicated work on the family life curriculum. And I also just wanted to say that on behalf of many, many, many parents that I know, that we support comprehensive, medically accurate, and inclusive sexual education in our district. Thank you.
Andrew Gardner.
You might call 3 names at a time because we're going to take time to get
I will be happy to do that. Andrew Gardner.
Good evening. Good evening. I am a graduate of Wrightstown Elementary, McGee Middle School, and University High School here in TUSD, and I'm the parent of 2 TUSD students. And I want you to know that I support comprehensive, medically accurate, inclusive family life curriculum. When our children are infants, we make all of their decisions for them. And when they grow up and start to learn about the world, we teach them about it. But we also help them contextualize what it is that they see and what they hear and what they experience. They learn about the world and about themselves and about other human beings in all of their wonderful and confusing complexity and diversity. But we do them a great disservice if we attempt to keep the complexity of the world hidden. No one, a child or an adult, makes better decisions in the absence of information. A comprehensive, medically accurate, inclusive family life curriculum does not tell students to make bad decisions. It gives them the tools that they need to understand the world that they inhabit and make good decisions about their place in it. As children grow into adulthood, their parents will always provide the context in which children learn. They will always provide them with the frame through which to interpret everything they learn at school, not just what's in the family life curriculum. That curriculum simply provides students the information they need so that they can ask their parents good questions. Ignorance of the world or of our own bodies does not help us make better decisions. And for that reason, I'd ask everyone to please support comprehensive, medically accurate, inclusive family life curriculum. Thank you.
We will next hear from Peggy McLean, then Melinda Babel, and Paul Parisi.
Hi, my name is Peggy McLean. I'm a taxpayer.
The microphone.
Our state law, as found in Arizona Revised Statute 13-3506, requires that no material that is harmful to minors can be given to children. And how does our Arizona law define harmful to minors? Well, our code specifically states that items depicting nudity, sexual activity, sexual conduct, or sexual excitement are not only harmful for minors, they are outright illegal. I respectfully request that the advisory board make the curriculum available so that we can have a chance to ensure the curriculum does not have any of these elements. A number of comprehensive sexuality education programs that have received federal funding in our state violate this statute, and we certainly don't want our curriculum to depict any of these as required by law. Considering the following quotes from sex ed programs in our state that violate this law. These are all from the curriculum Rights, Respect, Responsibilities. The first is grade 7, lesson 1, page 4. Crossword puzzle clue for clitoris, my only, in quotes, my only function is that I feel very sensitive when I'm touched, exclamation point. Second one, grade 6, lesson 3, page 4. Max and Julia spend a lot of time together now that they're a couple. When they find some private time alone, they like to kiss a lot. Max really wants to do something more, and so the next time they're alone together, he tries to pull Julia's shirt up and reach for one of her breasts. And my last example, grade 8, lesson 2, page 7. Malik watches porn sometimes when he's home alone and is nervous about whether he'll know what to do. Please allow us to review the curriculum and give us ample time so we can be sure none of those harmful elements nor anything similar will be used to sexualize Tucson Unified School District children. Thank you.
And first of all, I want to thank you guys again. I've been able to have the privilege to observe some of your discussions, and I know you've invested a lot of time and effort into it. It is appreciated. I want to thank everybody here that's come and taken time away from families, other activities that you might prefer to be doing. And I know that we have many different views on many different things, as many as people are in the room. And so I want to acknowledge that, and I would like to share my views as a nurse of over 35 years who has worked in many different settings as a nurse. And the one thing that I want to emphasize is that we have a very clear evidence that there are male and female. Now we know there's confusion and there's people that act out different ways. But the most important thing I think we need to address is the care and concern for our youth. Truth is what they need, and we can help them navigate difficult situations. But we cannot help them by adding confusion to the issue. People need to realize that people in the transgender process have a much higher rate of suicide than the general population of that age group. We need to love people through that. And we may not see the outcome we want, but we want to see people reach their unique gifts and talents and become productive members of society in every way that they can. The other thing that I would say is that I would really encourage you, since we know that abstinence is the only 100% proven way to avoid an unplanned pregnancy or sexually transmitted diseases that may not show up for decades that could have a harmful impact. But to spend more time on that and teaching people and empowering them how to say no to activities they may not want to participate in, to build up strength of character to be able to stand for what they believe in. And I know as a youth, although my parents did what they could, I made some very bad choices, and I have lived with some of those consequences. And I'm very grateful to be here and healthy at this point. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Paul Parisi. I represent a nonprofit organization called For Tucson. We seek biblical solutions to problems. And I thank you, Board, for what you're doing. I know that your committee has been meeting since February and working on revising our current sex education curriculum. Well, I'm really grateful for you taking the time to do that. I got some questions, though. When and how will the public get to review the full curriculum with all activities, worksheets, videos, supplemental material, etc.? We're also concerned that there's a board meeting scheduled for July 9th to adopt a curriculum, yet we haven't even seen it yet. It would seem to us that if you're going to be able to hold a meeting on the sex education curriculum, we should be able to have the benefit of reviewing the whole curriculum so that our comments can be helpful in the process. Giving my opinion right now means nothing because it's like a pig in a poke. If you can't see it, it's pretty hard to comment on what it's going to be. Why are we just now being invited to give the input? We don't want our input ignored, especially since there's so many of us representing many in our district. We don't want to be ignored, and these are our children. In fact, I have 4 grandchildren in district schools right now, and it's very concerning to me that they get the best possible education. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I failed to mention, and I think it's important for me to state this right now, this is a review of an existing curriculum, family life curriculum. This is not the adoption of a new curriculum. Our next speakers will be Mace Braven, followed by Fernando Gonzalez, followed by Robin Blumenthal.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mace Braven. I've been a teacher in TUSD for 27 years. No applause needed for that. Sensitive topics in education today are gender identity, the ideology behind it. Shouldn't be taught in TUSD. This is another policy that we're proposing for TUSD, the policy we hope that your committee will follow. Just like sexual orientation and gender identity, it's also one of the most controversial issues in our day, sparking similar widespread disagreements across our nation and state. I will say as a teacher, I'm not equipped to teach that. I've been a history teacher 27 years. The one thing I know is those who refuse to learn from the past are condemned to repeat it. When we start telling people that things that are classified as a problem right now, as far as the American College of Pediatrics would say, they would say a number of mental health professionals who have successfully treated gender dysphoria and used stress the affirmation of children's gender confusion by allowing them to behave and to be treated as the opposite sex reinforces a mental disorder. We don't want to do that. We do not need to practice psychology as teachers in a building. And along the issues of sex, I have 4 children. Many of you have children. It should be taught in the home. It should be taught by the parents. You do not want teachers who are not psychologists, who are not healthcare professionals, teaching about sex. We need people in there who, 1, know what they're talking about, 2, can give the right information. And I've heard some people mention that abortion is one thing that you might want to talk about. Well, the founder of Planned Parenthood classified several minorities as weeds of society that need to be pulled out. And I don't want anybody teaching my children anything taught by Planned Parenthood or any group that teaches that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Fernando Gonzalez. I'm a grandparent of 2 young kids in elementary school in the TUSD district. I am also somewhat concerned with the fact that the timeline of the process that we are seeing here. I don't know how the advisory committee can possibly take into account the feedback that we as parents can give or grandparents can give when you're actually at the final stages of finalizing this curriculum. You might, by law, you have to have this meeting, but again, the intent of the law was to allow citizens to actually have input into the development of the sex education curriculum. As a grandparent, I've actually reviewed the curriculum that's out there, that is put out by Planned Parenthood, and I really encourage parents and even some teachers to look and review that curriculum. It's pornographic. It's things that children, my grandson in kindergarten came asking questions about that. I mean, he's in kindergarten. He should be learning how to play the trumpet and singing and learning arithmetic and history and things of that nature. And again, I really encourage parents, if you're really interested to find out what's actually in those types of curriculum, you should do a little bit of research if you care about your kids. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting us be here. My name is Robin Blumenthal, and I am a homeowner, a community member. I have 4 grown graduates of TUSD schools and a foster daughter. I'm currently enrolled in a TUSD school. Just last night, I got back from visiting my very first grandchild up in Prescott, a perfect little baby boy. And as I was watching my daughter try to figure out all these mothering things, she got married 9 months ago. They were going to wait 5 years. And, honeymoon baby, and so now they're not waiting anymore, obviously. But one of the things she said is, I can't imagine doing this alone, because she is trying to, just all the different things. If you've had a child, you know that. So I think, as a parent, the main thing I would like to see in any curriculum is that our kids understand the consequences of what it is they may be choosing or not choosing to do. So when I spent time talking to them about what it's like, hey, if you choose to have sex, then you may you may be getting pregnant, and you need to know that that's going to be a consequence. You have to decide what to do and how to live and how that's going to affect you. And I remember this same daughter who was there. She says, well, you would never force me to get an abortion. I personally don't believe in abortion, so no, I would not. And I said, but you would need to raise that child. And so she said, well, then how would I go to school? I don't know. That would have to be something you would have to figure out. Well, what about this? I don't know. That would have to be something you figure out. So I think any curriculum that we teach really needs to help our students figure out what their choices are going to affect and how they're going to affect their life. I don't think any curriculum, whether it's a church-based or a non-church-based or a Planned Parenthood or anything that is trying to talk to our students that's making a profit, like a lot of times you hear things about Planned Parenthood. I don't know how much profit they may or may not make, but I certainly wouldn't want anything in a curriculum where other people would stand to make a profit off of our students' choices, whether they be good or bad choices. So my encouragement is that however we write the curriculum and however teachers are encouraged to do it, that they would spend time helping students to discuss what their choices and how those would affect their life, because I think that might do a lot more of the teaching rather than us telling them this is right or this is wrong. And while I might believe there's definitely right and wrong, I think that they need to be encouraged to think through to the end line, and perhaps then a lot more of them might say, hey, really, I think abstinence is a good idea for me because I'm not ready to be a parent or to go through the emotional whatever that might happen with with an abortion or any of those things, or what it's like to give up a child. So I just would like to make sure that we don't forget to encourage our kids. Certainly knowledge is power, but what happens as a result of that knowledge and how those choices affect the rest of their life. Thank you for your work.
Our next speakers will be Patricia Preble, followed by Elisa Medina, followed by Pam Anderson.
Good evening, and thank you very much to the board. Thank you very much to the board for all their work. I actually graduated from a TUSD school a long time ago. I have nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, all who are part of the school system. And it's important to me that what the school system does is the right thing. I support what I have read on the webpage about this curriculum. And I think that most of the people here, if they bother to read it, really read what is in the curriculum, they would know that it is not the Planned Parenthood curriculum. It is not the curriculum that teaches weird crossword puzzles and says all of those weird other things that have been cited before my speaking. This is a curriculum that teaches a child's self-worth, that teaches a child to be a good citizen, to care about the people around him or her. By learning to be a good citizen, learning self-worth, a student learns about being a good part of the community and about taking care of the important things in their lives, which would include sex education. Yes, it will lead into a discussion about that, but the real crux of it is about respect and community, self-worth, and all of the things that can make our students good students and hopefully have the kind of future we wish for them. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I had the privilege of actually serving as a committee member, and what you guys have been doing has taken a long time. And it's really hard to make up a committee that's trying to represent so many different viewpoints, and so I really appreciate your hard work. I am a Tucson native. My name is Elisa Medina. I grew up in the TUSD school system, and I have the privilege of running a faith-based nonprofit currently called Hands of Hope Tucson. We have a pregnancy center that comes alongside women and families facing unplanned pregnancy. So I'm pretty passionate about this topic, but I actually want to read my notes so I don't forget anything. In addition to our pregnancy center work, we work with youth and families on a prevention arm. And I've had the privilege of working with families in our community for almost 15 years. So I've heard lots and lots of stories. And part of my role during that 15 years was to teach abstinence education. I know that's a really bad word now. Abstinence education, which I like to say is sexual risk avoidance education in the public school system. And as I've been listening to the people that have spoken before me, I agree that knowledge is power. I agree that information is power. And young people are very bright, and they want to hear from the adults in their life, and they actually really value what we have to say, which is why this conversation is so important. I also understand that we have personal beliefs when it comes to sexual health. However, the truth remains that sexual risk avoidance is the best option for youth when it comes to optimal health for a lifetime. And this works for everyone. It's inclusive because optimal health works for a student who identifies in any way or has any sexual preference. We are wanting to give them the information that they deserve for optimal health for a lifetime. I thought it was interesting that a 2010 study, as I represent parents, I have 3 children, I think I said that, a 2010 study done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services under the Obama administration found that nearly 70% of parents are opposed to teen sexual activity, and for their own children in particular. And I believe this is likely true for many other TUSD parents as well. Certainly we want our children and young adults to avoid all risk associated with sexual activity, not just minimize the risk, which is why I would ask that this committee agrees that abstinence or sexual risk avoidance is spread throughout the entire curriculum, not just mentioned a few times. And I would also ask that you would let us know when this curriculum can be reviewed, if there are revisions, so that we can give comment before the TUSD board approves or does not approve this curriculum. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pam Anderson. Thank you to all of you. I know how much of a sacrifice your time is in all that you do. And I'm a busy person too, so I understand. But I wanted to share something with you tonight from my heart, and I'm going to speak from my heart. I've raised 2 children, TSD, and a Sabino High School grad and a University High School grad. My sons, and I have been in this community as a business person for 30-some years, since the 80s. We'll add it up later, but I know a lot of people in our community, and we talk a lot, and we're very active in our community. But we are my husband and I are also very strongly opinionated about what is taught within our school system. As I've seen across the country what has happened in the decline since and a lot of decline. We have shootings at school. We have a lot of things that our kids didn't have to deal with early on. There's just many things that have upset us and disturbed us. Sexual education curriculum is also very, very important, especially when it's kept to the scientific facts. But I do believe that the home is the primary teacher for those types of issues, societal type issues. And before I came here, I appreciate the diversity here in this room, and I respect diversity, all cultures and all different walks of life. But what I want to say is I did a little research before coming here today on Google and on Pew Research and on others. I have found our country is broken up in a little wheel of percentages. 75% of our country claim to be a Christian and have those values raised in the home. 7% are Jewish faith, and they also have those values raised in their home. Then if you go through all the other segments of society, agnostic and atheists represent 19%. Now this is by 1.5% variance on these different surveys that I looked at before coming here tonight. The LGBTQ community is only 4% of our country. Now, I am hearing rumors of what might be in this curriculum because I'm not seeing it. And I think every parent needs to have a copy of what is there to settle the rumors of what is being said is written in this curriculum. We need to know the facts of what's written in the curriculum. But from my point of view, I don't want any obscene pictures, texts, videos, and things like that shown because that would upset my 75% of values of the country believe, I think, the way that I do. So I don't want 4% of our country creating a curriculum for the rest of us. And I think we ought to have a voice that's heard in our opinion on that issue. In Miller versus California, for instance, at the Supreme Court level, it ruled that no obscene material should be put within any sexual educational material within our schools. And I would just hope the board really respects that decision of the Supreme Court, that only what would be wholesome would be truthful, factual, and stick to that agenda, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Does anybody want a seat? We have 3 seats for...
Got a couple up here.
Okay, we're going to proceed then. Our next speaker will be Bill Anderson, followed by Charlene Buck, followed by Tamara Sargis.
Hi, I'm Bill Anderson. I grew up in this town, went to Whitmore Elementary and Townsend Junior High, which is no longer there, at Catalina High School. I had sex education at Catalina High School. It gave me the facts. It was fine. That was what was needed. I'm a little concerned, though, that agendas are being put forth from outside agencies. 3 Arizona entities, the Department of Health, Arizona Department of Health, Arizona Youth Partnership, and Child and Family Resources in Arizona, receive federal funding to implement some very disturbing programs in our state. In fact, they may even be in our own district, as outside entities receive grants to implement these comprehensive sexuality education programs in our state. I want you to listen to a couple things from one of these programs called Making a Difference that is being used in this country. Have participants brainstorm answers to the following question. With all the messages teens are receiving about sex, what are some of the ways people express their sexual feelings to themselves and other people? Elicit as many answers as you can. Answers may include oral sex, caressing, dancing, masturbation, talking, hugging, kissing, talking, grinding, sexual fantasy, anal sex, massage, holding hands, cuddling on the couch, touching each other's genitals, vaginal intercourse, saying I like you. A similar activity is found in a number of comprehensive sexuality education programs in our state. I would ask that the board not put any activities like these into our sexual education curriculum. We need to see the curriculum well in advance, and I think every parent ought to receive a copy of it and be able to have input and vote on it. Thank you.
Charlene Buck.
My name is Will Kleiner, and Charlene Buck is my mom, but in the interest of time, we decided that it was better for the board to hear from a student currently in the TUSD system. I go to University High School, and next year I'm going to be a junior, and I took the sex ed class, or the health class that was offered to me in my first year, and all it covered was abortion. One single page of the booklet we got mentioned various other forms of contraception, I suppose. And that was it. It was all just, this is how you do not get sick. This is how you do not get a sexually transmitted infection. This is the way, and there is no other way. So for all you parents who are worried about abortion not being covered, trust me, it's being covered.
Or abstinence.
I've been out of school too long.
It's okay. It's okay.
How ironic, because abortion wasn't mentioned at all.
Thank you for coming up to speak to us.
Take your time.
Really appreciate it.
It's okay. It's okay.
Please, just take a breath.
I am.
Right, let's start.
Would you like to start over?
No, it's all right. It's all right. I can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I am transgender. I was born a female, but I started questioning who I was a few years ago. I decided that I didn't like that the word she felt wrong. Wearing dresses made me feel uncomfortable, etc., etc. And then I found out that there was a word for it. And it was so freeing. I was in a dark place. Because of my own inner turmoil, it began to seep into the rest of my life. But then I found out that there was something else that I could be. And I don't want to say that it's been a smooth ride from there, but to know who I am has gotten rid of all that confusion. I know who I am and what I want to do with my life. But I'm just one person. I think that we need education about all of these different things, because you know what's confusing? Not knowing a word for it, seeing that people are changing, but not understanding that there's something that they are becoming. And I feel that in our program, there deserves to be at least a little spot of there is something else. There's another way to be. And yes, so. To the teachers who said that they felt uncomfortable with the idea of sex ed, I feel uncomfortable with the idea of you being my teacher. You telling me that I'm broken, that there's something wrong with my head, that I need to be fixed. But I think that what needs fixing is that certain parts of society, which I think are less than 70%, think that we need fixing. And so I support a program of sexual education that shows that there are other ways of being, and they are just as fine. Thank you.
There's much left to say. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm a parent of a junior, also at University High School. And I'm a little late in the game, so I apologize if I'm ignorant about some of the work that you've already done, but my understanding is that you've been working very hard in updating the current curriculum, which I did have a chance to review. I work in the field of sexual health education, mainly in prevention. Been doing it for a number of years. And the curriculum was somewhat disturbing when I read it, but I was pleased to hear that you all are working so hard on updating it. In terms of abstinence, well, first of all, I support a comprehensive, scientific, evidence-based sexual health curriculum. And in terms of abstinence, what I think many maybe don't realize is that abstinence is integrated in every aspect of a good scientific comprehensive sexual health education. It's part of the facts that are taught. Let's see. I think a lot of the curriculum, I think what some people fail to acknowledge when we're teaching sexual health and prevention is that it's not always a choice, that there is such a thing as sexual assault in very high numbers. So when I was looking through the curriculum and I saw videos named like something about like abstinence, making the choice to stay disease-free, not everybody gets that choice. People are sexually assaulted, they're raped, it happens. And when a student who's been sexually assaulted sees a Title title of a video saying making the choice to be disease-free, that is sending a message that it's their fault. It was very shaming and very concerning. So I'm hoping that that whole video theme is, because it seemed like it was several times throughout the curriculum, those videos. And I don't know if you already talked about this and got rid of them, but I couldn't find them on the internet, so I couldn't view them. But I think it's important that we keep that in mind. And also that, remember, whether you like it or not, whether parents like it or not, whether Christians like it or not, kids are going to have sex. Not all kids, but many kids do. We talk to them all the time. It is better for them to be informed on how to make a safer choice when they're confronted with these decisions. It will save lives. It will save kids from getting infections. It will save kids from getting sick. Research shows time and time again that educating kids, that giving them the proper scientific information about sexual health actually reduces sexual risk-taking behavior and reduces teen pregnancy and reduces the sexual infections, sexually transmitted infections. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Iron Huffman, followed by Pat McClanahan, followed by Devin Soto.
Hi, my name is Erin Huffman, and I'm a former TUSD student. Today I'm here to talk about why comprehensive sex and consent education is not only important, but critically necessary. When I was 17, I moved from Texas to Arizona, and in the state of Texas, they did not require any sex or HIV education to be taught in public schools. And when I arrived in Tucson, I came 2 semesters after what Arizona offers for sex education. This left me with no sex or consent education, and because of my evangelical upbringing, abstinence was essentially all I had been taught. I was dating a person at the time, and because of my lack of knowledge, I thought that relationship equaled consent, and that sex was whatever your partner wanted, because if it's not abstinence, then you're not in control of what happens to you. Because of my lack of education, I am left with shame and sadness because of my experiences and for wanting to regard them as rape or sexual assault, but feeling like I am the one to blame. That the victim should be guarded against intruders, and according to Representative Todd Akin, if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down. I implore you to utilize this comprehensive consent and sex education for TUSD students. Don't let any of them have the same story as me, abandoned by their school district that claims to be separated from the church. This is a public institution, and students have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So do not take their futures away from them. Thank you.
My name is Pat McClanahan. The committee's familiar with me. I've been in your meetings. I've served as a volunteer in TUSD from 1977 to present as a football coach, 4 decades involved with students. And I have been one of a handful of participants who's able to actually attend the curriculum meetings. I've listened to the inner discussions. I've been allowed to share my perspective, and I've advised accordingly. In short, I have the same conviction as many others that we do need to see a curriculum. I do know that while this isn't about this curriculum, in the actual meeting that we've been talking about, there's been projections of curriculum that would be included, that's been written and approved, which describe gender-based identity. And I remember advising the council here, it wouldn't be wise to put that in, but by a 4-to-1 vote, you put that language in the curriculum. So that is coming. The only other thing, my heart goes out to anyone who's gone through struggles. I know I went through struggles. We've all gone through struggles. But there is another side that I believe is just as compassionate. For example, a girl who has anorexia, who's convinced in her mind that she's overweight. Would it be kind for me to tell her that, yeah, you're right, you're overweight, you need to eat less? Or do I need to go a little bit deeper into the fact that her subjective reality tells her one thing, but in fact it might be different than that? So many people who go through the transgender surgery, after they have the surgery, later on in life, they realize, just as I realized 3 years ago when I amputated my hand, you don't get those back easily. Fortunately, a doctor put this hand back on. When we move into gender reassignment surgery, it takes so much time and care, and I'm concerned that the introduction of this dialogue and these options would cause more subjective realities to take place in young kids without professional advice, counseling to help them, and it would be a danger to kids. Thank you.
Can I actually speak without it? Because maybe I don't need it. Hello, everyone. My name is Devin Soto, and I am a former TUSD graduate. And I grew up in the school system, and I remember when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to see the videotape of sexual education in 5th grade because my grandmother didn't allow it. And then later on in life, I was assaulted by a teacher, and I agree that there needs to be some form of curriculum on safe sex and sexual education, but I disagree with the fact that it needs to be pornographic or vulgar towards different groups. I think that the Bible states it very clear that, you know, sex is something that has to be consensual and it has to be pure because God made it pure in the beginning, and so it shall be in the end. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Brandy Resnick, followed by Barry Julian, followed by Imelda Cortez.
My name is Brandy Resnick. I apologize. I have severe generalized anxiety, so I'm going to be very shaky. I am a graduate of the TUSD system. I'm in Santa Rita, and I have 2 young boys, one of which is already in the system and one is about to enter. I'm very concerned about the way that they're being educated. And one of my biggest concerns is listening to all the things that are being said in our world right now and hearing what our current lawmakers are saying as to be facts. And as somebody else had already mentioned one of the quotes, which shows that they were not educated in how our bodies work and what is going on in relationships and with sex and with being healthy. And a large part of that is due to the fact that we have our curriculum focused a lot on abstinence and providing a lot of shame to those who do act in sexual behaviors. I do believe it should be inclusive. The people who do not see themselves in the curriculum will feel even more shame because they are, again, not like anybody else. And it has been shown that parents are the largest impact on a child's moral code. And I believe that you as educators need to provide the actual information of what is happening in their bodies and what is normal and what is natural. And these poor little boys are walking around with erections and they're feeling so much shame about it because we haven't told them that this is normal. And girls are walking around with having their periods at school and not being able to feel comfortable going to the nurse to get a tampon or pad because they haven't been educated on what's happening with their bodies. And this is extremely important to me to also include the concepts of consent. I am a rape victim. It happened to me from a family member. It happened to me from a boyfriend in high school. This was someone I was currently engaged in a sexual relationship with, whom I could not speak about with anybody else because I was being shamed for having had sex. Because I was taught that abstinence was the only way, and I had no knowledge, and that impacted my life hugely and still impacts it today as a 40-something mother of young boys. And I don't know how much time I have left, but I don't know what else to say, actually, other than please include this information for our children to learn. They need to know how to actually do these activities safely because they are doing these activities.
Committee, thank you for hearing me tonight. Appreciate your time and effort. I would make sure that you review this curriculum with a very, very fine-tooth comb. Don't be like Nancy Pelosi and say, oh, we need to pass it so we can find out what's in it, okay? We don't know what's in it. Let's be very important because we don't want to pass on any risky sex acts to the kids, any at all. I think we're all here for the betterment of the kids, and we all need to admit that, okay? And like Ms. Bobel said, were you aware that it is a felony offense in Arizona to provide children with harmful sexual materials under the Harmful to Minors Act? We will be proposing to TUSD that they do amend our district policy to include a provision prohibiting teaching about anal or oral sex in our district, and we hope you'll adhere to that in the new curriculum. That being said, I come from a family of educators with close to 80 to 100 years of experience. We've always done what was right for the children, always. Now I work for a company that has a wonderful partnership with this district, wonderful. And this one gentleman that just left earlier who was a teacher for 27 years, not only are we involving children, but let's also involve the teachers because I have a pretty good pulse of what teachers are in this district. I'm in the schools 10 to 12 times a month. Teachers aren't comfortable teaching this. They're not. Let's leave the birds and the bees up to the parents. Let the parents teach that. Okay, let's not sexualize our children. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, I had my notes. I also get very anxious. Hello, my name is Imelda Cortez. Buenas tardes. I'm here, of course, in support of a comprehensive, medically accurate family life curriculum. Right, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm also a teacher at Pueblo High School, the same school that I graduated from. I also went to Hollinger Elementary in Wakefield when it was around. And throughout my schooling, I was scared, right? I was scared. I wasn't the person that I am today, right? At school, when I went, as a teen, I never had a person to guide me in any way, right? So as soon as I could, I did what I had to do to be the person that I needed when I was younger, right? And now as a teacher, I feel comfortable talking about sex ed, not because I identify as a queer Chicana woman, but because I care about my students, because I'm willing to educate myself and others if needed, because that's the kind of person that I am, about how to speak to students just in general, right, in a way that's respectful, right, to them, to me, that makes them feel like they're human beings and not just kids, right? We often refer to our students as kids. They're not kids, they're people, right? Growing up as a Mexican-American Chicana person, my parents weren't really around as much, not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't, right? They had jobs. They wanted to send me to school with nice clothes because they wanted me to have the things that they didn't have, right? So we couldn't always have these kinds of conversations at home, right? And when we did, unfortunately, sometimes our males in our community aren't fully equipped with the language to speak to female-identified folks about sex education, about just relationships in general, right? So then the school was the entity that taught me how to be in a good relationship, right? How to be a good person, essentially. I feel when I was in the elementary system, I was very well educated in how to have good relationships with folks, but after that, I never talked about it again, right? It was abstinence, 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 which is fine, but that's not what our kids need now, right? At Pueblo High School, I have been designated the teacher where a lot of queer students go to, which I am very honored about. And I'm also the club sponsor for the IME Club, which is the similar GSA club the other schools might have, right? So I feel like I'm here representing all of them. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker will be Irma Goldkuhl, followed by Odile Wolf, followed by Beth Darnell.
You, everybody in the committee and everybody who's attended today. I'm here as a parent of 4 children, well, really mostly adults now, and one younger child who did go to Doolin Middle School. And I'm here to support and ask you as well to support with me and many people here today the work of that we appreciate your work in the committee, and we ask you to support revising the curriculum with medically accurate, inclusive, comprehensive sex education for the students in the district. As a parent of a child who does identify as transgender, it is very important to see them grow and to have the correct information. And I've seen it without that information, and it's very detrimental. And so thank you very much for your time. And again, please vote yes. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Odile Wolf. I'm the mother of a freshman to be in high school, UHS. I'm a Catholic, straight woman. I want to talk in favor of a realistic sexual education. Why realistic? There are children who are born neither entire male or female or both. Intersex rates is 1.7%. I'm including all types of intersex, not just the ones determined at birth. Numbers are coming from the US Library National of Medicine website. Keeping the sex categories to male and female uniquely does not reflect reality. We will exclude 1 child out of 100 in TUSD. That means that all of our children know 1 or more children who fall outside the arbitrary black and white norms we created and which do not reflect reality. Adolescents experience the highest level of sex hormone that they will have in their lives. Keeping them to abstinence-only sex ed is unrealistic. They are biologically urged to have sex, and we need to give them a sexual education which relates to their lives and give them tools to deal with those urges in a safe manner, physiologically, psychologically, and emotionally. My daughter's reality is that some of her friends are gay, some are bisexual, some are pansexual, some are asexual, some are trans, and some are questioning. All are trying to figure out who they are. They will do that regardless of what's being taught in school or at home. We can, as parents and as educators, either accompany this exploration and make sure it's done safely, or we can become obstacles to be overcome. Being silent about the difference between sex and gender and about the varied types of sexuality is being unrealistic. Moreover, it confirms that school is outdated and irrelevant in our children's life. Additionally, LGBTQ youth are at a higher risk for being bullied, for suicide, depression, and substance abuse. If we do not recognize their existence and its validity, we are part of the problem. Last but not least, the U.S. Constitution is based on the separation of church and state, the Bill of Rights. This means that religion has no place in education nor in government. Religion should stay at home, or quoting Thomas Jefferson, religion is a matter that lies solely between man and his God. Basing education in curriculum on religion is revoking the Constitution. Additionally, it is not being inclusive of all the people which constitute America.
Good evening. My name is Beth Darnell, and I am here to express my support for the committee's hard work in revising the curriculum so that it is inclusive, scientifically accurate, and evidence-based. I am a TUSD teacher, and I'm also a parent. I also have trouble using my phone. So everything I do and say is through the lens of those roles. I'm a parent to 2 children, one of whom is a transgender male. I believe that we are all here for the same reason, and unfortunately I think that reason is based on a lot of fear. Some of us fear that making the family life curriculum more inclusive will undo the moral education that we've provided at home for our children and expose them to what they might consider lifestyle choices at best and dangerous influences at worst. Others fear that if left unchanged, the current curriculum will further isolate and stigmatize LGBTQ children, whether they've disclosed their identity or kept it secret, and deprive them of information relevant to their experiences and gender identity or sexual preferences. As a teacher, I understand and empathize with all of these fears, all the fears we have for our children. They're the most vulnerable of our humans, and I work very hard to make sure that my students feel heard, respected, understood, and loved for who they are. As a parent of a transgender son, my fear for him and those like him who live in a world of the abnormal, who suffers tremendous pain and anguish, and debilitating fear that they will not be accepted, or worse, that they'll be bullied, persecuted. Their lives are not easy, and their identities are not lifestyle choices. I promise you, they would choose an easier path. These kids face challenges every minute of every day. For example, using a public restroom, a simple act for most people, is traumatic for transgender kids and adults, often leading to other physical and mental health issues. For me, changing the family life curriculum to make it more inclusive is about presenting all the current information that is available and that students will seek regardless of whether it is taught or mandated. It is about presenting facts about sexuality that can help not only LGBTQ students, but all students to better understand themselves and empathize with each other, providing a launching point for further discussion with caring adults at school or home. Because it is an optional curriculum, those who are strongly opposed to it, for whatever reason, can opt out. But I think it would be better if we trusted our students and each other. We will never agree fully on what is best for our students, and the school curriculum will never perfectly reflect all the values we hold, but I believe our public education system should serve the public, which is all students. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Kristen Gunkel, followed by Tracy Kurtzman, followed by Riley Conklin.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Kristen Gunkel. I'm a taxpayer and involved community member in the school district. I'm here tonight because with the recent repeal of Arizona Revised Statute 15-716C, Tucson Unified School District has an opportunity to stop harming children who live outside the narrow boundaries of binary gender and heterosexual orientation, or who are parts of families with parents and siblings who live outside those narrow boundaries. Fear is what underlies arguments to not change the family life curriculum in light of this recent lawsuit and resulting legislation. It is fear that somehow, by having a curriculum that recognizes LGBTQ people in a positive light, that children will become gay or transgender. But it is not a curriculum that makes us straight, gay, or transgender. We are who we are. However, it is a curriculum that has done us great harm by denying us positive images of LGBTQ people, by not providing us with factual, accurate, and affirming information about our bodies and self-worth, by keeping LGBTQ people hidden in the closet and rendering us invisible. The statistics are grim. What happens in school affects our self-esteem and our opportunities to thrive and contribute to society. There are thousands of kids each year who do not make it out of school because of how they are treated in school. And I'm not just talking about bullying here. I'm talking about the school board sanctioned treatment of LGBTQ people in schools through the choice of curriculum that is made available to them. Your current curriculum states that students should develop a positive self-esteem, learn responsible decision-making, and personal safety. Those are all important values and goals that I wholeheartedly support. But your current curriculum only meets those goals for students who fit in the narrow binary hetero box. You are failing to meet the expectations of your own curriculum by not meeting the needs of students who live outside that box. The TUSD non-discrimination policy states that TUSD will not discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. But by not meeting the needs of the LGBT community, you are doing just that, discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. The family life curriculum violates your own policies. The school district can and must do better. These statements of value and policy must not be for decoration. They should be guiding principles, and this body should live up to those principles. Make TUSD a better place where LGBTQ people are affirmed and where the curriculum promotes their positive growth rather than perpetuates continued harm. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you so much for all the work that you guys have put into this. My name is Tracy Kurtzman. I am the parent of a TUSD student who will be a rising sophomore in August. I am a pediatrician. I got my medical doctorate here at the University of Arizona in 2000. I am an assistant professor of clinical pediatrics at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, and I am a proud member for 20 years of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now, I want to explain the American Academy of Pediatrics. There are 67,000 pediatricians in the United States in all 50 states, and the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, devises policies based on science and medically accurate information. The American College of Pediatricians is a very tiny group of 500 people in only 47 states in the country who set forth their policies based on a collaborative opinion of those people. So I speak on behalf of most pediatricians, and I need to say definitively, the American College of Pediatrics is not what any of us truly consider a reputable source. I strongly support the work of the committee in revising the curriculum with medically accurate, inclusive, comprehensive sex education for TUSD students. I have heard all kinds of erroneous information this evening from people who don't know the science, and that's okay, but I do. This is my job. This is what I read about every single week. I stay up to date on the information, and I know the science behind this. Gender is not binary. That is old science. It's not accurate, and we shouldn't be teaching it. It is my strong opinion as a pediatrician as the parent of a TUSD child, that our TUSD students deserve a curriculum based on scientific evidence in the same way that our students at the University of Arizona College of Medicine receive a curriculum based on scientific evidence. Our TUSD students deserve a medically accurate curriculum. They deserve nothing less. Thank you. Also, I'd like to add that I brought you a packet of information with the actual medical evidence, which I have annotated and highlighted. So here are the medical studies and the statements from all of the many medical groups that know the importance of medically accurate sex education.
All right, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. Hi there, my name is Riley Conklin. I'm a product of TUSD High School and a supporter of the new medically inclusive curriculum and accurate. I cannot begin to explain how egregiously negligent previous courses have been regarding LGBTQ plus visibility, sex education, and gender expression and identity. For too long, society has stigmatized and erased topics of premarital sex, sexuality, gender, and sexual assault. It's time to grow up and stop catering to the delusional version of reality made up by cis, white Christian people. There are so many diverse bodies deserving of representation, especially within the institution providing their most fundamental education. In high school, I struggled daily with my sexuality and gender expression. I was left alone to wonder why I felt so horribly different from the rest of my peers. All the cis, straight, white kids had the tools to guide them through the most pivotal points in life. But a biracial, gay, gender nonconforming kid like me had nothing to help me understand the crisis I was going through. If I even had a sliver of information or just a glimmer of acceptance coming from my school, the place filled with people who are supposed to guide us through our early stages of life and set honorable examples for us, I wouldn't have had to go to bed with tears still fresh on my cheeks because I was convinced I was a monster. A monster society deemed me as, all because I was something else other than what it had already decided I was going to be. I wouldn't have had to live in fear of being outed and everyone despising me just because I like girls and not guys. I wouldn't have had my yearbook quote rejected because it was apparently inappropriate for me to make a joke about my own sexuality. Do you really think it's productive to isolate a majority of students just because they don't fit into an outdated racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, classist, ableist image? Your exclusion is telling us that we don't deserve to take part in your world. It's ridiculous that in 2019 we're still victim-blaming sexual assault survivors, calling different sexualities an alternate lifestyle, teaching abstinence and not safe sex practices, and referring to gender as a binary. Stop oppressing the oppressed. Give them the power they deserve to have. Show people of color, intersex, trans, and non-binary bodies. Get rid of the destructive stigmas and teach them the truth about our people. Stop draining the hope from the souls of all these kids just because you won't get rid of your hypocritical ignorance. If you don't start giving visibility where it's due, every tear shed, every ounce of pain, every life taken as a result of the intolerance in this school system is on you. Don't be the reason these kids become another violent statistic.
Our next speaker will be Mika Galileo Belfer, followed by Peter Gonzalez, followed by Rosanna Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mika. My son is going to be a junior at Tucson High Magnet School. My concern is actually fairly pragmatic. I worry about TUSD maintaining its credibility with our youth because these kids are smart, they're inquisitive, they're savvy, they're amazing. They're going to know if they're being shortchanged. They're going to know if they're getting information that's incomplete or dated, and they're going to know if they're getting information that excludes their own experiences and that of their friends. They deserve a curriculum that's comprehensive, that's medically accurate, that's inclusive, and I'll add that is consent heavy. They deserve a curriculum that reflects the world they live in. And thank you for helping make that possible as much as you possibly can.
Peter Gonzalez had to step out and ask me to take his place. My name is George Munguia, and work at a local nonprofit here in Tucson, born and raised Tucson native here. And I just want to ask a question. How many on the board or even public here have children? Have children? 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 So that's a lot of us. So I'm going to give a little example here. I'm having a training next week, and it's going to be for minors, and it's going to be a really great training. I can't really tell you too much about it, just you're going to really like it. And you guys have the option to bring your children to this training. Actually, no, you guys don't have the option. Everybody that's here is mandated to bring their children to this training. You can't review the, all you got to know is that it's a really great training. You're going to really like it. And you're going to bring your children, and I'll be sharing with them a lot of great information that's going to help them. And guys, I don't think anybody in here would agree to that kind of a scenario. However, that's what we're seeing with this curriculum. We're not getting the option to view and to review and to see what our children are going to be reviewing. And so my biggest request here is that you allow the public and parents and families to be able to review this curriculum so that we can make the best choice for our children. Thank you very much.
Is Ms. Rosanna Gonzalez here? Okay, well, next we'll hear from Belinda Handy. No Belinda Handy. Next speaker will be Allison Lee, followed by Jorstrom. I'm Yost, sorry, and then Rachel Johnson.
Thank you, committee, for your service. I'm sure it was hard. I imagine you had some disagreements here or there because there's so much diverse opinion here in the room from the parents. Beautiful diversity, which is just how democracy works. I'm a mom and 2 high school TUSD kids, and it's really scary to talk about bodies, to talk about sex with kids. That's been my experience. 2 people here, 2 teachers talked about how they felt not qualified to teach sexuality in school. I understand it's scary. Presumably the teachers who teach any sex ed curriculum would be trained. So, all people, including children, get sex ed every day, either at home with parents or at school, maybe, maybe not, maybe on the internet, maybe from their friends. So we can participate in that, we can shape that or not. If we feel too afraid, and it's really scary, I totally understand, been there. If we really feel afraid, then we might just say 15 minutes, 30 minutes worth of it. Abstinence only, don't do it, just say no, and we can see how that works out. That was what I was taught, just say no about drugs. And today we have an opioid epidemic in our country. So we as parents and we as teachers must attempt imperfectly to shape the curriculum. TUSD's old curriculum was too scared and too short and too small. And when my daughters went through it, they would talk about it. It was this or that, it was nothing. The kids were all laughing. Everybody knows. They don't take it seriously. So as a parent, I chose to enroll my daughters in a comprehensive, medically accurate, fact-based, scary, inclusive, everything kind of curriculum. I watched them go through, it was age appropriate, so when they were in kindergarten, it wasn't, you know, it was age appropriate. I looked through all of it. I thought, oh my goodness, bless these teachers who are teaching this. It was outside the school system. And my children went through it. And as a mom, we would sit and talk about what they were learning, and they were learning so much. It was so beautiful. And then they would go to school and get the little 30-minute, and we would compare that. And I heard from them over the years the difference between what they were learning outside, which was in a church, by the way, and what they're learning at school. So I vote for a revised, medically accurate, comprehensive, inclusive, because children are human beings with human rights curriculum. Thank you.
My name is Joost van Haaren, and thank you, committee, for all your work that you've done. I'm here also to support a curriculum that is accurate, fact-based, inclusive, and comprehensive. And when hearing a lot of people here say all these images that are coming forward, well, they actually, if you show images that are real, these are the sex acts that people produce, and that made us all be here as well. So the fear of pornography is real. Therefore, we need to actually have real images of actually sex acts that need to be part of a curriculum. However, we need to be inclusive. We also need to not alienate anybody in a curriculum, but and serve all the students in the community. Thank you.
Hello, committee. Thank you for being here. Thank you for revising and looking at revising our curriculum. I'm a teacher at a STEM school, so therefore I believe in science and comprehensive, medically accurate, inclusive family life curriculum. I'm also a mom. I have a son at Tucson High who just finished his health class as a sophomore. I don't believe that that is age appropriate. Perhaps you've heard of the internet. Children can access the internet. And we do need to give them accurate information. We need to give them science-based information. I'm teaching at a middle school, and I can tell you, these kids can break through many of the TUSD, anything. I mean, they're watching porn. I mean, we stop them. That's our job, part of our jobs. So I believe that we need to start teaching this at a much younger age, as in 5th grade. They've already seen porn when they're 11. It's all over the place. And so I really think that it needs to be earlier. You know, at 16, a lot of them are already having sex. And they're not getting the information at home. Yes, I definitely believe. I mean, I talk to my son all the time about sex and that I don't want him having it. I don't. But I also want him to know that his girlfriend could get pregnant if they're using a condom or not, and diseases, and they need to know at an earlier age than 16. It needs to start in 5th grade. I'm a child of a priest. I was raised Catholic and Episcopalian. I was raised in the buckle of the Bible Belt in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we had sex ed when I was in 5th grade. We had drug education when I was in 4th grade. Like, come on, Arizona. Let's go.
Our next speaker will be Ethan Orr, followed by Lisette Trujillo.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I want to thank the committee and especially the students that spoke. That was very courageous. I was incredible. Let's give them a hand. That was a huge thing to do. My parents were proud educators growing up at TUSD. My son is going to UHS next year, so we're now a proud TUSD family. And one of the things that I really, listening to everyone, believe is that no one should feel stigmatized, no one should feel rejected, but that perhaps that solution is not a curriculum, it's a culture change. A culture where we engender, as a superintendent, as a board, to start to respect and understand each other's differences, be they political, be they gender, be they anything else, and that we work to engender culture change, and that this curriculum may or may not be a silver bullet. One of the things that I start seeing as a parent and also as a public official, I've really heard 2 curriculums talked about during this time. I've heard one side and another side, and I frankly don't know which side to believe. And so what I would submit to the committee is this is an opportunity to dispel rumor, whatever they may be, with truth by slowing down the process, by publishing the curriculum, and by allowing everyone on both sides of this discussion to actually view and understand and see the curriculum and to see all the nuances of it before we rush into a decision. It may be a good curriculum, it may be a bad curriculum. Allow us as a community to view the curriculum so that we can understand it, but then also so that you can't be accused of railroading something through in July, because none of us want to do that. One thing that I do say, and this is me speaking as an educator at the University of Arizona for over 16 years, a concern I have is that particularly at the elementary and the junior high level, what I've heard of the curriculum, it's a bit on the prescriptive side. See, I believe that as educators, our job is to teach kids how to think, not what to think. Many of us have been involved in community activism. I've been very involved in our community activism since the 90s. And there was a very prominent community activist who I looked to for wisdom. And I remember her saying to me and to others, I don't care if you think the way I do, but I do care that you think. And when I look at what's happening in terms of what I've seen of the curriculum so far at the elementary level particularly, we aren't equipping kids with the ability to come to logical, scientific, empirically evidence-based conclusions on their own. We're prescribing things. And so I would simply ask, particularly at the elementary level, let's give those kids those tools before they start having a conversation that we as adults are having trouble having. Thank you.
Do we need a motion?
It's 8 o'clock.
It's 8. Do we need a motion?
I was instructed to go to 8:05.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Good.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisette Trujillo. I am a Tucson native, and I am also the parent moderator for the family support group for the Southern Arizona Gender Alliance. We represent about 100 families who have transgender youth and or gender fluid, gender creative youth. I want to first say that I'm grateful for all the work that many of you have put forth. I want to say that I strongly support the work of the committee in revising the curriculum with medically accurate, inclusive, comprehensive sex ed. I also want to say that I think when I speak with families and when I meet families of trans youth that they've just come out, the parents always tell me that they're afraid. And they're not afraid because their children are trans. They're afraid because they know that the world is unsafe for their trans children. And so many times when people talk about inclusion, what we're asking you to really take into account is safety, the safety of our children. And I think that we can all relate to safety. I mean, we live in a society where we all practice in safety measures, right? When we're walking on the right and we see somebody walking to the left, we scoot a little bit over. We use traffic lights. We adhere to stop signs. We are all trying to keep each other safe. And so I'm going to share a personal story with you. I drive my child 45 minutes away from my home. I live in TUSD. I wanted my child to be in a safe district that had gender protected in their policy. But it did not keep my child completely safe. My child, another student discovered that my child was trans and proceeded to tell him really interesting things all year. That culminated in, you will be the first one to be raped in middle school. My child is a 5th grader, he's 11, and did not know what the word rape meant. And came home, because I grew up with Catholic guilt too, I'm from Tucson. I went to Catholic school. I didn't teach my child what the word rape. I didn't think it was necessary. He's 11, he's in 5th grade, he wants to play Minecraft and play basketball with his friends. And so when he came home and told me, Mom, this kid told me I'm gonna be the first one to get raped in middle school, and what is that? Because I do not want that to happen to me. I was horrified. And it continued on throughout the year until the other child met the definition of sexual harassment. And so when people talk about trans youth and LGBTQ youth as being these beacons of obscenity, I want to tell you that my very innocent 5th grader was not that, and was exposed to things that I was not prepared for them to be exposed to. And so I believe that when we create visibility, when we say that other people exist, that differences exist, we are allowing for our children to be safe in those environments. We're teaching other children to have empathy over other people. And I just want to say thank you all, and I want to tell the kids in this room, you are not alone. Families, you are not alone. You can find me, reach me at the end of this. I'll wait for you. And I just want you to know that there's a large community that's willing to embrace you, and whatever you need, we're here. So thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Committee, it's now 8:07. You have a choice, and I've been instructed to talk to you about. First choice is to continue to hear input, or you can choose to respond to that input now. How many of you would like to continue to hear input?
Can you tell us how many cards are left, please?
Yes, we've gone through 37, and we have a total of 60.
So that'd be 23.
Yes, sir. How many of you would like to continue with input?
I mean, my preference would be the 23 cards that are already submitted. The folks came down. We should hear them out. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about that.
I agree. We have some work to do, but I think that we have this opportunity.
So I'll make a motion that we hear the 23 cards that have been submitted.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
It appears unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That would work.
We'll continue. Next speaker will be Cammie Broken, followed by Camilla Benning, followed by Maddie Mogan.
Oh, yes. Nice. I love those kids.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carol Brochin, and I also want to thank y'all, the committee, for also to allowing those of us that came down to speak. I don't have a lot to add. I just want to echo, I'm a parent of 2 children, one who is cisgendered and is starting at UHS in the fall, and a second child who is transgender, who we left the district, and we will be returning to the district. We left the district because of bullying that happened around the family life curriculum in 5th grade. As a result of that, my child was the second plaintiff in the lawsuit that overturned what is known as the no promo homo law in Arizona. I'm proud to say that our Republican governor repealed that law. We did not go to court, as y'all know. As a result of that, we have also overturned in Regulation 7.2.303, the regulation that deals with sex education. The districts are no longer allowed to, quote, promote a monogamous heterosexual marriage. These are two decisions that were approved by our Republican governor. These were decisions that we should not have had to file a lawsuit. That should not have been something that my now 13-year-old experienced. That said, I want the district to take this as an opportunity to teach inclusive sex ed. I really promote trusting this appointed board and committee and trusting our elected officials. Please, what I urge you is to not fall to the pressure of the conservatives in the room. We can listen, they can provide feedback just like I can, but the reality is that you all are appointed and you all are elected and we have trusted you. And so if you look at the regulation, I welcome those of you in the room who have not had a chance to study it in detail the way that I have had to because of my personal experience, that in there, it does not say that the public has to review the curriculum before it's approved. The curriculum gets approved by our board. And this is a moment where I'm gonna trust our board. I'm maybe not necessarily have always done so, but I would say that in this moment, we have to trust the people who have the knowledge, right? Just like I don't have a say over calculus math curriculum, right? That's not my area. I want to trust and turn it over to the experts in the room. The people who are a danger to our kids are the people who don't believe in inclusive sex education, and their children can opt out. The only thing that I would say is that I feel that our repeal did not go far enough. So I challenge the board to lead our state in the work that we need to do. Thank you.
My name is Camila Benning-Zapian. At the start of the fall semester, I will be attending the ninth grade at Tucson High Magnet School. I'm here to discuss my problematic experience with the family life curriculum, starting with the philosophy and goal statement found on the TUSD1 website. In this section of the curriculum, it states that the program should be taught in a way that shows, quote, respect for the values and uniqueness of each individual, and in a way in which students learn to accept responsibility to protect self and others. Statements such as these could begin discussions about gender identity and reproductive justice, including abortion and consent. However, there were no discussions about any of these topics in my experience because of the curriculum's lack of explicit inclusion of the ideas and its failure to acknowledge their existence in the first place. This shows that the district is erasing and failing to include people who are often marginalized within society, including the LGBTQ+ community, despite the fact that within their curriculum, goals, and philosophy, it states the exact opposite. How are individuals supposed to develop positive self-esteem, responsible decision-making, and demonstrate self-worth, which are all things included in the curriculum's goals and objectives, when information vital to their well-being and good state of mind is so obviously being forced away from them? Finally, I would like to share with you some of my experiences in the last family life class I took this year. In this class, I had two teachers, both women, who taught me all about abstinence and how it was the only 100% pregnancy and STD/STI prevention method, which is true and should certainly be made known. However, this was taught in a way in which fear and shame was used. Fear of life never being the same if myself or my peers were to catch a sexually transmitted disease, and shame if we were to become that one girl who got pregnant in her teenage years. Like I mentioned previously, there is absolutely nothing wrong with making abstinence known as an option. But this culture of shame and fear is what creates teen pregnancies in the first place. When people feel like information about their bodies is something to be policed and kept under wraps, and they don't have access to information about things like birth control and abortions, is when misconceptions are born. When I asked about abortions, I was promptly shut down because the curriculum did not include them, and the teachers were afraid that if they did talk about them, they would get in trouble. This is a perfect example of knowledge being withheld and doesn't even include the fact that there was zero conversation about sexuality and what it can mean for different people. I hope that this information prompts you and the Family Life Curriculum Committee to look thoroughly over the entire curriculum and revise it to be more inclusive in an empowering way, less shameful, and overall a better source of information.
My name is Maddie Mogan, and I feel it is very important for students to speak since we are the ones getting impacted by your guys' decisions. I'm starting 8th grade this year and I'm 13 years old. I only got a little bit of information about family life in 4th grade. It was not enough to give students a full understanding of how to be safe and healthy with their bodies. Every student deserves an effective family life experience, and I want TUSD to have a family life curriculum that includes all students with beneficial teachings that inform all kids of understanding gender identity, sexual orientation, positive examples of LGBTQ+ individuals, and everyone on facts, myths, stereotypes about the LGBTQ+ community. Studies show that this will actually reduce bullying. And a non-inclusive curriculum would be bad because most LGBTQ+ students will end up online. Unfortunately, many of the resources online are not appropriate and medically incorrect, which will result in unsafe or risky behavior, which puts students in harm's way. And it's not their fault. Students who cannot talk about their issues or questions in a safe and accurate environment are at risk for mental and physical health problems. This also puts them in harm's way, and once again, it is not their fault. An inclusive curriculum in TUSD would help reduce sexual risks and support positive sexual outcomes. It would also reduce unprotected sex, unintended teen pregnancy, rates of sexually transmitted infections, substance use before sex, and bullying. Some families are not comfortable with this, and you can opt out. But I also think TUSD should find a way to share the inclusive curriculum with the people who opted out. TUSD has the chance to lead Arizona with a positive and inclusive environment for every student to learn about themselves and one another. I know that there are only a couple students tonight, but I know a lot of kids at my school who would like to be educated about this.
Our next speaker will be Karen Fritz, followed by Guillermo Duarte, followed by Jacqueline Curtis.
Hi, my name's Karen Fritz, and I just want to thank all of you that have worked so hard on this. I am glad I'm not you, because this is very important and very daunting. And I am a resident of Tucson as much as an Air Force kid can be. I graduated from Santa Rita High School. Recognize Trish Preble. And one of my sons went to Santa Rita, and my husband graduated from Saguaro, and one of our sons graduated from there. I'm a teacher, and 2nd grade now, have taught 4th and 6th for 1 year only. And I definitely know that each person in here would never rubber stamp a curriculum And I believe that you are truly reviewing, and that's what I really thank you for. I am concerned about intimidation. And I have learned from every person in here, I have appreciated everyone. There's not a person in here I haven't had a point of agreement. We're all here because we care about. And my concern about intimidation is different than yours. I want to know if there's accountability with the teachers as an authority figure. We've talked about, how we know that a lot of parents would like their kids to abstain, but we do know what happens to the teenage brain. Brain development shows us that they're quite convinced as they become teenagers that they do know everything, and what's really important for me is respect. So I am concerned that whoever's going to teach this will both respect the kids whose families would like them to talk to each other. I know I talk to my kids a lot. I wanted no question to ever be off the table. I come from a family with many doctors, and vagina was not a forbidden word in our family. My sister was an OBGYN. But my sister also, at 16 years old, was not comfortable with talking to her own parents about her unplanned pregnancy, and went to Planned Parenthood and talked with a doctor who promptly did not discuss her options, as we have talked about tonight, but picked up a phone and called the doctor and lied and said, I had a married woman there. Later found out in medical school, a tumor that and so very quickly, I'm concerned about authority figures that would contradict their family's belief. I do want respect, and I want, as one person said, I want teachers critically. I want respect for every, regardless of their age, regardless of that. I have an example.
Your time's up. We're
Okay.
3 minutes. Thank you very much for your comments, though.
Can I say one more sentence? Remember the blind man and the elephant need each other. And doctors need nurses.
Guillermo Duarte. Jacqueline Curtis.
Thank you all for what you're doing. I'm here as a mother of a TUSD student going into UHS as a 9th grader. I'm a nurse and someone who's deeply concerned with the welfare of all children. I stand here before you to advocate for the committee in revising the sexual education curriculum to be medically accurate and inclusive. This type of instruction does not promote anything. Rather, it helps to ensure that no student's passage through adolescence and puberty is stigmatized or made invisible. All young people have the right to scientifically sound information in regards to puberty and sexuality in order to make truly informed decisions about their bodies, relationships. No child should be placed at unnecessary risk due to lack of accurate information. By revising and updating this curriculum with medically accurate and inclusive information, you will prepare all the young people to go out into this complex world and have the tools and knowledge to respect themselves, their bodies, and to respect the diversity of bodies and experiences that surround them. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Elizabeth Reeves, followed by Zoe Reeves, followed by Justine Wadsack.
I see my time, thank you. My name is Zoe Catalanotti Reeves. I am a TUSD educator. I am also a student of TUSD schools where I received pretty much the same ineffective and also dehumanizing curriculum that I am so grateful that you are looking to revise. I strongly support the committee's work to review and update the family life curriculum. I am here on behalf of queer students unable to go to family, perhaps some of the people that spoke in here earlier, looking for support and knowledge anywhere that they can. I am here on behalf of my trans students who may never see their own worth, value, and beauty represented in curriculums from their teachers and in their schools. I am here on behalf of my students with queer parents who do not even hear their own homes spoken about in this curriculum. I am here for my own 14-year-old self who was filled with confusing information, shamed, and not given the whole truth ever. I am here for my 15-year-old freshman sister who deserves to know all of the information and not have it withheld from her. My students and my sister deserve comprehensive, medically accurate, effective, and inclusive curriculum that is meant to inform, to protect, and to treat all students with dignity. Thank you so much for all of your work, and thank you for choosing to do the right thing.
I guess we don't have to get neither of them.
Is Justine Watzak here?
Good evening. I am thankful for the opportunity to be able to address TUSD board tonight. I come to you as a concerned parent as I have raised 4 children in TUSD schools, and I've done so over the past 16 years, 2 of whom are currently enrolled at Tucson High. Both are on IEPs for special needs. And I come to you as a concerned citizen as well as a candidate as I'm running for U.S. Congress. It is my understanding that tonight's meeting is not about this controversial comprehensive sex education plan that was proposed this last Monday by Arizona State Board of Education's Chief Superintendent, Kathy Hoffman. It was a proposal to reopen R7-2-303, inserting inappropriate ideology from outside resources such as Planned Parenthood and GLSEN. It was a proposal that was contested by hundreds of parents, 68 of whom spoke out against this proposal, which led to 6 of the board members vowing not to vote for this, should it come to a vote. Superintendent Kathy Hoffman was left with no choice but to withdraw her said proposal, which was deemed more appropriate in the hands of state legislature, not a rulemaking board such as the Arizona State Board of Education, and definitely not within the school district such as TUSD. Parents across Arizona are feeling vindicated right now, as this was a big win for us that day. We came together to remind the state of Arizona that ARS 1601 and ARS 1602 stand for something. These statutes stand for the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, and mental health of their children as a fundamental right. The state and the political subdivision of the state or any other governmental entity shall not infringe on these rights. With that being said, tonight we are here to discuss family life curriculum, which has already been taught within the TUSD, and it does require some updating. But please understand that considering the fact that the state board nearly succeeded at slippery sloping the parents with CSE, we are here to ensure that the same is not going to be happening through TUSD. This verification is imperative in order to gain parents' trust in TUSD moving forward, as adopting such a curriculum as CSE could be a game changer for all of you in terms of potential child abuse liability to TUSD. DCS considers ARS 13-3553, Section B, as the litmus test for the removal of children due to sexual abuse, using the legal definition of child abuse as exposing children to sexualized materials, which any progressive health or sex ed curriculum runs the risk of violating. There is no age-appropriate information that will pass the ARS 13-3553 smell test if it includes distributing, possessing, or exchanging, one moment please, visual or print media.
I'm sorry,
There are many people that had more time than I did.
Ma'am, your time is up. Thank you very much.
I'm going to say one more thing.
Our next speaker, thank you very much.
This is obviously not a very Republican-friendly room, I'm guessing, right?
Our next speaker will be Rebecca, followed by Emery Engel, followed by Rachel Cheeseman.
Hello, thank you for letting us speak. I'm currently a graduate student at the university studying the phenomena of anxiety, depression, trauma, and how creativity can help heal the trauma process. I also volunteer with women who are coming out of incarceration and or living on the street, different situations that they've been in. And so my piece to this is just to ask if you're also looking at, yes, the respect and relationship part of this, because the women actually tell me, I don't want any more information. They say, I have had too much information in my life. What I need to know is how not to choose the wrong partner or how to choose the right partner. And they come out of all different lifestyles, all different religious backgrounds, different faiths, or no faith. So I'm not necessarily, I'm just saying this is what the women, there's some teenagers who have had many children or many abortions, and they are asking daily, how do I have the right kind of relationship? And I don't know, I haven't seen the curriculum, so I would say a balance between whatever information you put out there, no matter what someone's orientation is, about respect and how do you choose wisely, because no matter what our information, I mean, you have PhDs in my classes fighting over things. No matter how much information we have, it doesn't necessarily give us wisdom to make certain choices. And so more information doesn't mean better choices. We have the opportunity to marry those two. And just, I think that's what the most progressive thing to do in terms of Arizona. If you want to, I mean, that's what happens in the future. Life coaching's $1 billion industry. Why don't we start trying to see how can we coach good decision-making, no matter what it is, ahead of time, ahead of the time when I meet the women who are going through really hard times because of choices, not because of information. So just some practical questions. These are a little bit of side of this, but in light of the current academic schedule that we have in place, one is how many hours will this curriculum be taking up in the day? But also, is there a balance in that? Is there a balance of how much scientific information that you're saying, and also the balance of humanistic, like choice making? That's more qualitative. Will the curriculum be available before approving? The date it's available? Is it going to be available on the internet? And one of my other concerns from my research is this curriculum, I know you're not going to answer this now, but is the curriculum online? Are they answering things online? Because once they do that, that data is owned by whatever entity owns your data for the schools, and it's not private anymore. So if you are thinking of this curriculum going on to the internet, just think about privacy, because there is no privacy, and they can sell that data. So whatever a student may be answering could be sold. That would be one of my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for extending your time to hear all the speakers. I'm here as a licensed foster parent in Pima County, and I'm also here as a parent, and also as a transgender person who went through the TUSD school system and their sex education. I felt pretty underrepresented as a young person. I know that a lot of the kids that my wife and I foster are going to be underrepresented have been underrepresented, and unless these revisions go through, will continue to be underrepresented as far as sex ed in the system. And that has been stated before a lot of times. It's not a choice. Abstinence. It's not a choice for a lot of the kids that I come to know. Most of the kids in the system have been sexually abused or assaulted, and being in the foster system places them at an increased risk for that to either occur again or to occur initially. Those kids have only one way to be protected, and that's to have the knowledge and to have the confidence that they need to be able to talk to somebody when something happens and if something happens. So I really, really support the revisions that are being talked about, and I hope they get approved. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Rachel Cheeseman. Thank you for extending the time so I would be able to give my statements as well. I'm here because I'm going to be a future resident of the TUSD district, and I'm also here because I grew up in Indiana, and I went to our public schools in the Tippecanoe County School District, and the district's policy was to teach nothing with regard to sex ed in middle schools and teach abstinence-only curriculum in high school. The combination of religious and cultural conservatism that characterized my home county and the lack of any information to keep us safe in sex did not stop the sexual development of me or my peers. It left us with all the same urges, but nothing in the way of information to understand it or vocabulary to advocate for ourselves and our boundaries. The results were disastrous. As far as our male peers were concerned, those who had sex were sluts and those who weren't were teases and prudes. And neither of those things were good. For a lot of my young female peers who were scared to ask for birth control but also terrified to become pregnant, they were vulnerable to coercive inducements on the part of their boyfriends for oral and anal sex, and they usually eventually had vaginal sex anyway, occasionally resulting in unplanned pregnancies, unplanned parenthoods, and abortions for those who had access to them. For those like me, for whom sexual development took a little bit longer, we carried those same fears with us, those same anxieties, and those same flawed notions of shameful attitudes towards our own sexuality. We carried a lot of anxiety about losing our virginity after having made it this far. And in an environment rife with binge drinking, many of our first sexual experiences were ones where the concept of consent was entirely absent or gray at best. The reality for too many of my peers that went through the abstinence-only curriculum that we experienced is that in adulthood, we are coming to terms with the fact that rape and sexual trauma are part of our stories, whether as victims or as perpetrators. As an adult who is a product of these curricula, I beg you not to do this to our children in TUSD schools. I beg you to care for them and keep them safe in sex as their whole selves. There are not two sides to this issue. There is one that is decent, that is humane, and that is medically accurate, and then there is everything else. And I want to take a final moment to address something specifically. As a devout Christian, I want to point out that Jesus would leave no child vulnerable to sexual trauma and self-loathing the way the adults in TSC failed me and my peers. It is an insult to his memory and everything that he stood for to suggest he would command it here.
Followed by Taylor Shacklet, followed by Jessica Carpenter.
Good evening, and thank you for extending your time so I could make some remarks. I'm Kirsten Engel. I'm actually a state representative here in Legislative District 10, and I'm also a TUSD parent. And I'm here to support revisions to the family life curriculum. If you all succeed in these revisions, it will be the first update to this curriculum in 21 years. And I think we can all agree that how children and adolescents understand themselves, their bodies, their sexuality, and their gender has changed markedly over the past 21 years. And it's about time that we had an up-to-date, medically accurate curriculum that all students can feel addresses their identity in this important area. I'm very proud to have been in the legislature and to have voted in favor of the repeal of Section 15-716, also known as the No Promo Homo Law. Enacted in 1991, this law forbade sex ed teachers from portraying homosexuality in as a positive alternative lifestyle. Who knows how many vulnerable young people were harmed by such a law? This law told young people who are gay that they are wrong to be who they are. And with the rising level of STDs, this law contributed to a lack of medically accurate information on how to make healthy decisions for their bodies. I support a family life curriculum that is inclusive and removes all stigma upon LGBTQ students that has failed our students for too many years. In addition to being a state representative, I'm also a mother of a TUSD teenager. And I know too well how important questions of sexuality are and how they hunger for medically accurate information, honest information and discussions. Their bodies are changing, they see their friends' bodies changing, they see the changes in the sexual identity of themselves and students around them. These are hugely important issues, and they will affect these students for the rest of their lives. I feel that we're at a crossroads. We can take one of two paths. We can either equip them to make responsible decisions about their future sexuality and sexual health and their gender identity, or we can deprive them of the information that we actually have and have access to, and leave it to them to take that information from the internet, from their friends, where they will no doubt pick up a lot of erroneous information and possibly become victims of sexual abuse. So thank you very much for the opportunity to give these comments, and thank you for what you are trying to do.
Is Taylor Shacklet here? Jessica Carpenter. Our next speaker then will be Mary Winnick. And following Mary will be Celeste Rodriguez, and following her will be Nathan Joy.
Thank you, committee, for extending your time. Really appreciate it. I'm a parent of 3 TUSD students. I have a 5th grader, an 8th grader, and a freshman. I've heard a lot of things tonight. Rachel Johnson and I worked together, and she said a lot of the things I'd love to say. First being, sex is not being taught at home. I work with the middle schoolers at Mansfeld, and they don't have a clue what is going on with their bodies. Some of them are already sexually active. They didn't even know that they could say no to their boyfriends. Some of the schools are doing a pretty good job with their family life curriculum. I say pretty good job, not great, not awesome. But some of the schools aren't even teaching it, even if they have it at their access. This is evident when we do discuss genetics in 8th grade science. These kids have no clue about anything with their own bodies. And that's a shame. I do support the revision for the comprehensive, inclusive, scientific-based sex education that's inclusive. However, I do also think we do need to go holistically, and we do need to be starting it in pre-K all the way to senior year. It needs to start with stranger danger. This is my body. Nobody can touch it. Consent. And I think also too, we can utilize our school psychologists a little bit better with this. They do go in and do breakout sessions about who I am as a person, as an individual, and they could help bring in a lot of that as well. So thank you for your time.
I want to thank you guys for spending the time and letting us speak. I come to you today as a mother of 5 children, ages between 7 and 14 and 16. I am students. I am the product of also TUSD and the 21-year-old curriculum that has not been revised. I was a 16-year-old parent. I am in so much support of the revisions to include comprehensive, science-based, intense work on our children and their bodies and their health and their sexuality and inclusivity. My youngest is 7 years old. She doesn't know what she's gonna be. My oldest is 16. He's still questioning who he's gonna be. They need all the information to know what they want in life, who they're gonna be in life. It doesn't say that those are the roads they're gonna take. They just need knowledge is power, and they need the education to know what is and what isn't. I want for all the parents to know that if you don't want your child there, they don't have to be there. But don't take that away from my children. I want my children to have this education. I want my children not just to understand their bodies, but the bodies of everybody around them. Ignorance and not understanding how other people live their lives or how other people's bodies work that are different than yours, that's outdated and it's not the way we need to live. It's not what I want for my children. I hope that you guys continue these revisions after this. I think there needs to be more. I can tell you that my fifth grader, she hasn't had it. She started her period early, and there was no family life curriculum at her school at Tolson. They skip it. There's nothing there. I want these revisions. I want accountability within the school, and I want the district to understand that this is what parents want. Whether it's 4% or 19%, I fit into the 75% Christian, cis, heterosexual, but I want to speak for the 19%, for the 4%. I think everybody's voices should be heard.
Hi, my name's Nathan Toy. I was a former student at TUSD. I went from kindergarten all the way up to 11th grade. I did end up dropping out. I'm now currently a full-time student at the University of Arizona, so.
Yes.
Now, I am old enough to have gone through TUSD's current family education curriculum. And we talk a lot about, well, this new one is going to be harmful. This new one is going to be something that's going to put our kids out. And I ask those people that feel that way, what about the current system? And if we look at this current system as not being harmful, well, we can use myself as an example. What I learned through the current system was that if I was a victim of abuse, it was my fault. And that happened to me because I deserved it. My family, being a broken family, according to Family Health, because it was a non-nuclear singular parent family, was broken. So initially, just because of the way I was born and because of my experiences and because of my environment, those things were wrong. Consent was something that we glossed over, and I didn't want to have sex at all during my time going to high school. But with all the social pressure, with all these things that were going on with my body, I didn't understand these. I didn't know what was going on, and I was forced into a lot of those situations. And when you couple that with, again, the social pressure, trying to figure out what's going on with your body, and then trying to figure out being right there on the cusp of what are you going to do for the rest of your life? You're going to graduate. What's going on after that? It led to severe depression. It led to suicidal ideation, and it led to an attempt. And I know I was lucky enough to get a second chance and be here to be able to share my story and give my perspectives on that, but I know not every student does. I had multiple friends that never got to have another day. I was there with them. I saw what happened. And so when we talk about this current system being good, not harmful, it's not accurate and it's not true. So I just want to share my story and hope that y'all can see that there is some revisions that need to be made and some changes that should happen. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Manny Rivera, followed by George Munguia, followed by Will Kleiner.
Hello. Thank you all for extending the time, and thank you to all of you for staying to hear everybody out. My name is Manny. I currently work in a high school, and I'm studying to be a history teacher in high school, and I come from Virginia. I've been here for 3 years, and I have a brother in the TUSD system in the 7th grade. In Virginia, there was no real sex ed. I don't even remember it. It was pathetic. The sex ed that was there was abstinence only. It was heterosexuality only. It was monogamy only. It was nuclear family only. It was sex is for marriage only. I'm still queer. I was raised in a very Catholic home. I was told my whole life that being gay, that not being straight was wrong. Still queer. Have a lot of friends in the same situation. We're still queer. We're still here. And all that it did was make life a lot more painful for us and a lot more difficult for us. It pushed a lot of us into abusive relationships because that was the only place we felt accepted. It pushed a lot of us into situations we didn't want to be in because we were in so much pain that there was nothing else that we could do. We couldn't talk to our parents. We couldn't talk to our counselors. We couldn't talk to anybody. So pushing for a medically accurate, comprehensive, inclusive health education program, all that you're doing in doing that is providing safety for your students. You're providing an environment where they feel comfortable talking. You're providing an environment where they feel like nothing is wrong with them. They're not broken. They're just different, and different is okay because everybody's different. Beyond that, I do want to point out that for it to be truly inclusive, you have to include gender. You have to include sexuality. You have to include things like polyamory. You have to include different family situations. You can't talk about sex education without talking about lesbian sex, without talking about gay sex, without talking about situations where people find themselves. Because as queer youth, a lot of us don't know what we're doing. And a lot of us get hurt because we don't know what we're doing. We get taken advantage of because we don't know what we're doing. And just really quickly, to point on a few things, if you're an educator and you don't want this to go through because you feel uncomfortable talking to your students about sex ed, you can learn. You're an educator, you teach people, you can learn yourself. And if you're uncomfortable talking to your students about health and about sex education, things that are academic in nature, these classes are not porn classes, they're academic classes where you're learning about your body, where when you go home and look in a mirror, what's standing in front of you is your body, then maybe you shouldn't be a teacher. And finally, last point, just to comment on something that was said a lot earlier, clitoris is not a bad word. That statement was entirely accurate, and that is it. So thank you, everybody.
My teen and I changed places. I'm Charlie Buck, Will Kleiner. I'm here in support of the revisions to the family life curriculum. Sometimes a child's experience is beyond a parent's. That's why it's important that educational materials convey a wider world. I hope this curriculum is allowed to speak to all the students in the classroom, not just the heterosexual ones. In a recent workshop I took, I'm a teacher, on creating a more tolerant and respectful environment in the classroom, we discussed surveys showing that more than 40% of students identified as something other than heterosexual at some point in their lives. In a vulnerable time of life, the simple act of acknowledging a wider definition of gender and sexuality than male, female, and hetero can be life-saving and comes at no cost to the other students or educators. Thank you for your work providing a safer and sounder foundation for all of our students.
Is George Mungia here? Okay, thank you, sir. Our last two speakers will be Bethany Munson and David Leary.
Hi, my name is Bethany Munson, and I'm a law student at the University of Arizona. I am new to Tucson. I moved here in the fall, and as a law student, I'm trying to decide where I want to practice, where I want to live, where I want to start my family after graduation. And, where I want to stay and practice will be really influenced by the school districts for where I want to raise a family. I really want to have kids, and that's a huge consideration for me. And I will not feel comfortable staying here and raising my kids in TUSD if there is not inclusive and comprehensive sex education. And I know that that is a view that a lot of the other new law students in my class also share. I believe that curriculum reflects school values, and I don't want to send my kids to a school that do not value inclusivity. It is my expectation that the school I send my children to and their faculty treat all students with dignity and respect and love. And that can't happen unless the curriculum is inclusive and comprehensive and represents all of the students in TUSD. I know some people here earlier were speaking about 70% of this country are Christian, but I would also add to that that doesn't mean that 70% of those Christians are not open and affirming or do not support queer people and are also not queer themselves. I'm a queer Christian. I was raised by a pastor, a very evangelical pastor in California, and I believe that I'm currently living my life how God made me to be. And there are open and affirming churches here. This is less for you probably, more for the people in the room, but there are lots of churches that are open and affirming and have queer and trans clergy and members of their church. And those voices in the room tonight do not reflect the entire Christian community. I want to make that very clear. And if I learned anything from Sunday school about how Jesus loved people during his life, I know that God is big enough to be the God of queer and trans folk too. And I really thank you for all your work on this and all your consideration. Have a good rest of your night. Thanks.
It's fast, so everybody gets to go home, right? I'm David Leary. I'm the parent of 3 children at TUSD School, Miles Elementary. I support comprehensive education that's inclusive 100%. I actually think it's insane that we're actually even having this conversation. Everybody in this room probably agrees we should teach addition. We should teach subtraction. Nobody just ignores geometry. We don't teach that. Or we don't not teach trigonometry because maybe some teachers don't want to teach it. We hire teachers that can teach that. We don't not teach calculus because we want people to hopefully learn it at home. It's really insane that we're having this discussion. And that's it.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody who shared comments with us. And now to the committee. I'm going to give you a chance to respond. You have 3 minutes each. We're going to ask no more than 2 committee members address any one speaker. And with that, I believe I'd like to start with Ms. Gruber.
I think Cindy.
Oh, Cindy wanted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Coleman.
It's okay.
Let's start with you.
Well, I'm just going to give a little background about the committee itself. We began about 4 years ago, or actually 3.5 years ago, because students came to the board and asked for there to be an update and a change in our curriculum. I'm a graduate of TUSD. I am a parent of graduates of TUSD. I have 9 siblings from TUSD. I taught in TUSD for 37 years. I taught the sex ed curriculum, and I quit because after about 3 years of knowing I could get in trouble by talking to certain students certain ways or being open in answering questions, that I could get fired. As a single parent, I couldn't handle that. So I went over to the gym, opened my door, and had lots of office hours. I want to thank Dr. Trujillo, because we began this process a number of years ago, and as a curriculum specialist, I will tell you that it was a mess. We had no guidance, we had no curriculum direction. I ended up having to kind of be the person that taught people how to write lesson plans and how to read the state standards and how to read the state law. And we had to thread a pretty fine needle, and it was really difficult that we didn't have that support in the beginning. So just putting it out there, being honest, that we false started, and we do have 3 original members that we're still hanging in there because we believe in this option for our kids. We believe that we need to bring this forward, and we need to make the changes that update this. Some of the changes are simple. We don't want to use VHS tapes anymore in the classroom, okay? I will be honest, I have outreached to superintendents prior. I have worked with them. I have worked with the current one. I let her know that I'm very concerned that one thing that isn't covered in state law or in the code has to do with sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment. And so as an educator, I would be having a difficult time putting it out there in front of my students if I'm going to be threatened with legal action. So for me to change the culture, I felt like I needed to go to the top and have those conversations, and that, I hope, will become part of the updated code. I will be up there a lot talking with them about it. I don't want parents to feel afraid, but this curriculum has been online. We have nothing with putting the current curriculum that we're looking at online. That's not our decision. Okay, so we're going to ask you to be patient and have conversations with us. And I'm going to tag off. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, and thank you, board. And I want to thank everyone in the audience for being here tonight. It's a late night, and you've spent a lot of your time sharing your opinions. And I know how nerve-wracking it could be to be up in that podium and speak to these issues and sharing some of your really personal stories of your own situations and backgrounds. And I thank you for that. I'm a TUSD parent myself. My husband and I are fathers of 3. And our oldest is going to be entering 2nd grade in line weaver in a few months. I'm also a family physician in our community. I attend deliveries. I take care of patients from birth to end of life. I teach residents and I teach medical students. And I spent almost 5 years in the Midwest staffing a high school-based health center. And I've seen all too often students with STIs, with unintended pregnancies, with such ignorance on what they're doing and their sexuality and what their consequences are of their behavior because they were never taught. And I'm sick of that. The original curriculum that we have, when I first read it a few months ago, my jaw dropped. It was medically inaccurate, it was stigmatizing, it was shaming, and it did our students harm. It literally said in there such things like mutual masturbation was going to lead to pelvic inflammatory disease. It shamed girls who were using tampons and linked it to toxic shock syndrome. And it pretty much said that if you have anal sex, you're going to die a horrible death. And that's what we could imply by some of that curriculum in there, and I was flabbergasted. What we've created, what we've drafted isn't perfect, but it is comprehensive, medically accurate, and inclusive. And it is going to be in the best interest of our students. And it is supported, as one of the other speakers said earlier, by every major medical organization in their policies that have weighed in on this issue. I want to end by just giving a quick shout out to the parents of trans individuals who spoke this evening. One of the earlier speakers talked about trans suicide and implied that because we talk about gender in our curriculum, it's going to lead to confusion and lead to more suicidality. What we know is that the biggest predictor of suicidality in LGBTQ individuals, especially trans individuals, is family rejection. Not knowing what they are going through, not having medically accurate information. And I thank the mothers who spoke, and I thank all of you who are really just the advocates for your kids, and you are the most important people in their lives, and thank you so much for what you do.
So, good evening, everybody. Adam Reagan, I want to first off thank everybody for being here again, echo the previous two committee members that spoke. And in the interest of getting to the other committee members and the work that we're going to do since you all have stuck around so late, a couple thoughts that came to mind. First, I want to really thank the 3 students that we had come up. I see you. I would be honored as a teacher to have you in my classroom, and I really want to thank you for coming in. I know it can be nerve-wracking to come up to the podium, so thank you for doing that. I think as a teacher, it's important for me to touch on a couple of things. That we give professional development. The teachers in this district are trained and equipped to deal with this curriculum, and we will continue to work with them to make sure that happens. We have a great leadership team sitting over there that will make sure that our teachers are prepared to meet the needs of our students, and that's what we're here to do. I got involved with this work. I continue to do the work that I do because I believe in advocating for all of our students and each of our students. And a little bit of my background, I have I guess I want to call it an honor, and I don't know a better word for it, but the start of every school year, I get a phone call, typically from a parent, sometimes from a student, that has been turned away. Recently it's been, couldn't get an ID that properly reflected the student's name and gender, and that was the student's first exposure to TUSD. And it bothered me. We have a chance here in this curriculum and throughout our district to make sure that all of our students are affirmed, each of our students is affirmed, and I'm going to continue to do that work. And I guess I want to go back to the beginning. One of our earlier speakers said, and this is where I kind of start each day as an educator, nobody makes good decisions in the absence of information. So that's what we're here to do. There shouldn't be shame, there shouldn't be stigma, there shouldn't be any sort of confusion about what we're doing here. Again, it's not necessarily, I'll echo the comments earlier, we have no problem as a committee putting the work out there. We ask you to be patient, have the conversations with us. This is an imperfect process. As we're learning, it's been 21 years since we updated this, so we're kind of learning as we go. And I really want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you.
So I'm Reverend Stephanie Hamilton, and I was one of the original members of this committee. It's been a long journey with many, many late nights and lots of hours. But I will say this, one of the things that I think I'm most proud of this process, and as we are starting to come to a close, is that I fully believe that this was a process that the people who were appointed from the original committee all the way till now, I believe that there has been fair representation. We were very careful to make sure that as many sectors of our community here in Tucson were represented, and those voices were heard at the table. And it would be a huge task to go back and look at our minutes, but everything has been carefully documented, and it is there for the public to see. And we have made sure that we followed Robert's Rules of Order, open meeting law. We've been very, very careful with this process because we believe in the importance of this work and of the necessity of updating this curriculum. And we didn't want to be the cause for all of that hard work to be thrown out the window. So you can trust that the committee has done this with intentionality and that it has been transparent. And we have had an opportunity to make sure all voices were heard and represented at the table. The other thing that I'd like to respond to that I've heard from the parents, one thing is, and I hope most of you in the room know, that Arizona by law is an opt-in process. Parents have to sign a paper in order for their children to participate. So this is not mandated. This is not mandated education. It is something that the parents are given a choice. The curriculum that I think is still posted, but has been posted, is the old curriculum. The new stuff won't get posted until it's been through a different process. But you can see what's up there, and you can go through that curriculum and understand what we've been working with the last 3.5 years. And the one thing that we did ask for in the very beginning, and I have to give a shout out to Dr. Trujillo, is that we asked for time to make sure that this curriculum was comprehensive, that it was cohesive, that it was consistent, and that it was quality. We're getting there, and we appreciate the community support. I have 3 children in the district. They were in elementary, middle, and high school when we started. I've got now 2 in high school and 1 in middle school, so I've been a little bit impatient with the process, but I think those were a couple of the things that I wanted to address.
Hello, my name is Bernadette Gruber, and along with Stephanie and Cindy, I was a part of the original committee to work on this curriculum, and we have stuck it out for almost 4 years, and because we care about kids. We care about children in our not just in our own families, but in the whole community. And I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who have come out, and you have stayed late in maybe a hot, crowded room because you care about kids as well, and you wanted to have your voice heard. And there's a lot of different voices here, a lot of different opinions, and which makes it challenging to say, okay, where do we settle? Where do we land? One of the things I heard loud and clear was that you're asking for transparency, and in that vein, I want to be transparent that the only curriculum that we have finished is high school. We are still working on the other curriculum grades, and hopefully we'll have those done. But I just wonder, how do we take all your input and try to incorporate that? How to listen well and then see how to implement your feedback. I'm not sure how we do that, and if the curriculum is going to be going for approval on July 9th. Is that correct, Dr. Trujillo? If I have my dates right. Okay. It would be nice to have more time in order to incorporate that and have your voices heard, and that we can put that out to the community and to the parents and the families so that they can see it firsthand. And then if we need more input, you can actually see the curriculum, so you can actually speak in reference to that curriculum. There was mention of a lot of misinformation and a lot of fear. Well, that comes from lack of clarity. So I would love to give gives clarity by actually allowing you to have ample time to see the curriculum that is completed when we complete it. But I just appreciate you being here. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I have 4 children. I care deeply about our youth and their future, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Gherkin. I am a former TUSD bilingual teacher and librarian, and I apologize for being late. I had an event for my work. So in the short amount of time that I heard a lot of your ideas and your opinions, one thing that stood out to me was a lot of worry that we were not going to share with our children some of these basic concepts, such as healthy relationships and respect, which we know is one of the fundamental foundations of healthy living. And so I just want to share, we put together a scope and sequence our last session so that we could really see the big ideas and make sure those big ideas were repeated throughout the curriculum. And I want to share some of these initial ideas that we are going to have essentially from 4th through 12th grade. Effective communication skills, decision-making, self-confidence and empowerment, overcoming peer pressure, self-concept, refusal skills, and assertiveness. So those were all basic foundational ideas that are going to be repeated every year that our kids have family life. And I also heard some issues and some worries about accountability and about making sure that every child has access to this in every school. And I'm going to rely on TUSD. I'm going to rely on our administrators to make that happen after all this hard work that we've gone through, to make sure, as a parent myself of TUSD students, I know that frustration because my children also did not have access to family life because it was the school's decision to not teach it, which I personally find unacceptable. So I hope that after all this work, we're very proud, like we've all said, of the hard work that we've done, and we think this is a really solid curriculum, and we hope that every single 4th through 12th grader in TUSD will have access to this curriculum once adopted. Thank you to our school board members for being here. Thank you to our administrators and Dr. Trujillo for being here, and thank you all parents and family members and students for sharing your thoughts and your ideas. Thanks again.
So Emma, Dan?
So I left a little bit of my time. I was hoping, or maybe could I defer to some of my colleagues on the committee, but I did want to say two things that touch on a common recurring theme from tonight, which was we did look specifically at making sure that we revised the sexual assault lesson to reflect modern, contemporary understanding and to get rid of the victim shame and blame that was contained there. And then we also looked at consent, and that's going to be something as we get into the rest of our meeting tonight, you'll actually be able to hear that we're working to make sure that all of our kids have the tools to establish healthy boundaries, to enforce consent and assertiveness, as well as self-confidence throughout the lesson. So I just wanted to say that part.
I want to thank you again for coming out, sharing your thoughts. We're going to take a very short 5-minute break, and the committee meeting will convene at 9:21. Thank you.
In here, in this room.
Yes, we're not going to move up stairs. We're going to meet here. Thank you very much. Yes, that's open to the public.
I would like to call up Dr. Gabriel Trujillo. No, we're not going to do it there.
I'm Gabriel Trujillo, the superintendent. I address you tonight through call of the audience in adherence to our currently set agenda. The reason for the call to the audience is two reasons. I want to thank each and every one of you for the time, the commitment, and the passion that you have brought to this process, especially the 3 charter members, Bernadette, Stephanie, and Cindy. I can't tell you how thankful I am, and I can't express the gratitude that I feel for your commitment across the years, through all the bumps and all of the challenges that the committee's experienced since its inception. I remain fully committed as a major goal of my administration to bring a comprehensive family life curriculum to the over 40,000 students in this district. It is a moral and educational imperative. What that curriculum looks like is in the hands of all of you in this collaborative process. For that reason, I remain committed to any support that you need from me, up to and including additional time, additional support, additional resources, additional personnel around your committee to get the work completed. I also want to remain committed to being accessible through either myself or my leadership team to be able to facilitate events like this evening, should you need them. So with that, I'd like to thank you once again for all of your work on this very, very, very worthwhile and life-changing initiative for our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there were no other cards, I'll move to close this so we can close the audience call and move on to the agenda.
And I am also going to be passing this sign-in sheet.
Anybody got a second for that?
I second it.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. I'm trying to keep us moving so we get to the 10 o'clock.
Thanks for facilitating.
Yeah. Voice, we want to save Dr. Patterson's voice.
I don't need to read the norms.
We don't need the norms. We have our Review of the minutes. Oh,
That's my sister. She's got it.
thank you for staying so
She
late.
can read the norms if she wants to.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
So we have the minutes from our last meeting on June 20th.
I've got 2 for 20. Who's missing a copy?
I have no type 2 as well. Wait, this is
I have one for the 10th and one for the 20th.
I have a 10th and a 20th. I apologize. I didn't realize we had 2 of them on there.
I've got a 10th and I've got 2 20s.
Wait.
I got a 10, I got a 220. You get 2 5s? Okay.
I have one too, though. I've got 2 for the 20th.
All right, so we'll start on June 10th, which these are long.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a motion and a second for the June 20th minutes. Any revisions, additions, changes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. So then we are on to the grade 6, is that correct? So,
Yeah.
Cindy.
Grade 6, I put it out for review. I think it was uploaded on Saturday. We found that I had multiplied lesson 1 and put it in twice, but Sarah and I somehow connected and got lesson 2 over to her, and it looks like it's down there.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
started formatting what you had put in there, just so it's kind of in the end result, but not
Yeah,
approved.
we're close.
So I have the table of contents for 6th grade and then all lessons except the 6 or 6, 7, whatever that is.
I did, everybody that sent me edits on that, I did go through and make those changes up until through last night. I just, today.
So, does anyone have anything
Right.
they want to address out of the edits?
Okay.
You know, so there's a couple of spots that I know you threw my name or someone threw my name in there in terms of like medical stuff in there, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much different we want to have it from the high school curriculum. Some of these things,
I was
that's probably
wondering if
beyond
I
my
should
scope of.
copy-paste that,
Yeah,
because there was a section that
Right.
requested your.
Yeah, so that's, I feel a little bit behind my scope of like knowing what language changes that happen going from high school to 6th grade curriculum. Like, so when I did the 7th, I haven't gone through the 6th grade curriculum in much detail. I did go through the 7th and 8th grade curriculum in detail, and you know, as we know, a lot of these issues that we're addressing in the high school curriculum, you know, if we wait until they're 14, 15, it's too late.
Right.
Issues of sex and sexuality and STDs and contraception, you know, it's unfortunate and sad, but you know, I have delivered babies of kids who were still in junior high.
Right.
And,
Yeah, like, we didn't know what would really,
yeah.
right here, when would it?
Right, so that stuff can just copy and paste. I think that's not.
Right,
Yeah, and
because
the
it was
lesson
8 to
from
12,
that's
and
lesson
it
7.
was.
And I think for the 6th grade lesson, the more relevant piece is, you know, early puberty or you know, signs, like you're not gonna, they're what, 10, 11 years old, is not relevant for them in terms of like getting too late in the puberty. That's gonna be more of a 7th, 8th grade. They should know, you know, too late at that point, and so they can recognize that if they haven't hit puberty by 14, 16, as the other ages. So I would copy and paste the precocious puberty, too early puberty, and some things that they should expect when it comes to having their body change at that age, because in most cases between 9 and 11 years old is when we'll start seeing the first signs of puberty.
Right. And there was actually some of that referenced in the old curriculum, so it's not that it's going to be any earlier. I did have to go back and rearrange some things because of the scope and sequence that we developed. And so I agree with you that some of it seems like it's late, and I know I put a note on something for 7th grade because of that. I have a concern, yeah, let's just hang on right onto the, yeah, she knew that it was the table of contents.
Yes.
We had, I had taken out the birth process that had been in sixth grade because we had, Yes, yes, because we had pushed it back to high school or to late middle school. But that gave me some room, and so what I'm suggesting, and I will go and do all the writing, that instead of having bullying, hazing, sexual harassment, dating, those things that we said in the scope and sequence we need to address in 6th grade, if we can split it, if I can split it to 2 lessons, like are indicated here, and just get it done, get it edited, get it over.
So
and-
number 6.
So 5 and 6, yeah, I think it's under 5 in the original curriculum.
contents,
Yeah, and so this is what I'm asking, is that we switch it so that I felt like social activities and how people hang together with groups and how they come together and start even looking at dating each other and doing group dates and stuff like that, that seemed to fit together under social activities. But I really wanted us to pay some respect to the bullying and hazing, and sexual harassment, which really aren't addressed too in-depth in the old curriculum. Bullying and hazing is just really glossed over. So I'd like to give it a little bit more of a place. With that said, how do you guys feel about us keeping both genders, the boys and girls together, or would you think it could be more impactful if we dropped it down into where we have boys and girls separately? Yeah, so if we put the bullying, hazing, sexual harassment, it may be a little uncomfortable for kids for their initial time to talk about it, to be all together, but I'm really open to what you guys suggest, what you think.
I mean, I would think all together, but at that age, I mean, I guess it depends on how we're actually addressing it with the activity that goes along with the lesson.
Right, and some of it is done, but, you know, as we split it out, you could look at the lesson plan real quick and give me some feedback on how to split it out, what you would be.
Say at my daughter's school, I think that would be a conversation that would be comfortable with
Together.
And because the girls and boys will compare notes, and they do compare notes, and she can't wait to hop into the car and talk to her brothers. I mean, it sparked an incredible family conversation, but I think at her school, I think some of that stuff is appropriate for me, between the 2 genders. I think it would be just fine.
So I'm gonna, just kind of go down the row and see, okay, thank you. And Bernadette?
I liked I think you were originally saying to put it with the boys and, well, you didn't know. I'm thinking to move number 6 down to be taught separately, only because the sexual harassment piece is in there, and if somebody has been traumatized because of sexual harassment, I think it would be handled best in a separate.
That was my concern. I mean, we can make it real vanilla and have them together, or we could even have them separate, work through it, and then even do something together where they do some role-playing or whatever.
And remember, in the guidelines, this is addressed.
Right.
You know, it's addressed. So I don't think it's something necessarily that needs to be secular. That's up to the committee to decide.
Right.
But, you know, this is, especially when kids start reaching adolescence, this is like something that comes up daily in every class, at least once.
Yeah.
You know, like you're
right.
providing redirection,
Right.
or, you know.
If that would.
How about some other, go.
If I could just add real quick and then go. One of the things I like, Cindy, that you added is that hazing piece. Things we talked about is that happens so often in the locker room.
Right.
Especially the boys' locker room, and so hazing kind of fit more with what happens there, and so maybe it could be, I don't know, I just like that you added that. So it may be something different than what's addressed on the regular basis when you add in the hazing and the locker room behavior.
And so maybe that's just a piece of that could drop down into the other separated, or do you think it's fine where it is?
I guess my question would be actually,
Yes.
does it create a safer environment to foster the kind of conversations, the interactive component to the lesson? In which case, if that's a safer space is having boys and girls taught separately, then let's drop it down. Maybe with like an asterisk that this is a thing, one of the things we come back in a year and actually look, how did this specifically work out, having them separated?
Well, I think, let me just clarify. When I said that this is something that comes up all the time, I meant that we already kind of cover it superficially, daily, multiple times. So,
Right.
For the content of what you guys are proposing, this may look different.
Okay, yeah. What do you think, Robbie?
So I'm not sure what the right answer is, but, part of this is just to really have that empathy and understand the other side. And if they're separated, do they have that opportunity to have that empathy and understand what the effects of bullying, hazing, sexual harassment is? They'll do it for their, folks with their own, gender, but they won't do it for the folks with the other, and if they're separated.
That's a good point.
But is, what's in the best interest? And I'm not sure what the answer is.
I mean, clearly, it'd be nice to actually maybe have both, if you could choose both, like having the separated, but then also come back together. What did we learn? Let's work with each other. But I think on a time crunch for the curriculum, it doesn't fit to make 2 lessons out of it.
Well, I like what you said about which one promotes the safest environment for those who may be traumatized. That's why I'm thinking.
I would advocate for having sort of a dual experience, right? Because I think there is a lot of value in kids being together to discuss. And I also think, as Bernadette was saying, there are going to be situations where some people need a safe space, and they won't feel safe in mixed company. So if there's any way that we can sort of add a little bit more of that sexual harassment part 2 when they're separate, that then does both, because I don't think there's any harm in doubling down on that
It can
content.
be woven into number 9, lesson number 9.
Right.
So maybe taking that into consideration, we introduce it in lesson number 9. There's nothing that says we can't bring the class together after 9
Yeah,
for some interaction. I was the pain in the neck PE teacher that insisted on teaching both genders. Everybody was
Everybody
together
together.
because I could control their behavior
Right.
and force them, so to
Right.
speak, to behave a certain way.
Right.
But there were also times when it was important to separate them, to really deal.
So do you guys have a motion?
It sounds like kind of what, Cheryl, can you put it in the form of a motion?
I'll make a motion that the topic of sexual harassment be repeated twice, once when students are taught separately, and add it to number 9, along with risks of sexual activity, and then add an additional piece where when everyone's together at the end of the lessons, that they come back together to discuss sexual harassment as a whole group. That wasn't very concise, but.
It was not concise, but I think I followed it.
Taking notes.
I will second that. I will second that.
Could I just ask for clarification? Because under harassment might be something that is done
To you. Right.
And so I'm
Right.
not sure if it fits.
So maybe it's number 10.
Yes.
So you're suggesting that we need to add a new lesson. If that being said, then I would suggest that 6 actually just get moved all the way down to the bottom, so that
Part
we
of that
can have a
lesson is-
follow-up.
And part of the lesson is then coming
Yeah.
back together as a whole group.
Right, okay.
And I actually would advocate even more for that, because I think things happen when you've got your classes and you're teaching them through time, that dynamics change, and I think they get a little bit more mature from point A to point B. And by the time they get to the end, they may be more capable of having reasonable discussions with each other based on those prior lessons. So I think.
Let's pull back your original motion then and do that as a motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're gonna rescind that?
So I'm going to rescind that lengthy.
was a good one, though.
diatribe.
Yeah.
So,
And then-
Did you get all that, Irma?
sorry, Irma,
But I
I'm
just need the new
sorry.
language. No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay.
All right, so
Okay,
we-
so,
What's the new motion?
then I'll make a new motion
6 just moves down to
that
under human
6
sexuality.
moves down to become number 10?
No, no, it was 6 still before 7. We just moved 6 down below where those 3 are taught separately, now it's those 4 taught separately. But number 6 has a caveat in there that they come back together at the end, right?
Right.
Yeah, so the motion would
I
be
know
to
I'm lost.
move, yeah,
Is that what you were saying?
That is, so I'm saying that it needs to be taught together and separately, but the together comes at the very end of the entire lesson set. That's what I'm saying. So I
So-
think it needs to be covered
like that.
under boys and girls taught separately.
right. So instead, make it a number 10. I was just wondering, should it precede puberty, reproductive system, risks of sexual activity, or does it come after that? In terms of the actual sequence of the lessons?
I don't know, what do you guys think? I mean,
Why is bullying and hazing not being taught together?
we're gonna,
They
the idea
are,
is that
down
we're
at the
gonna do that
bottom.
at the very end. That's gonna be the last lesson that they do all together.
They'll come all together
So
for
you're
it.
proposing
Together,
that,
separate, together.
if I,
Right.
correct me if I'm wrong, but you're proposing that they go through 1 through 5, then they go separately
Yep.
for 7, 8, 9, and then they come back for lesson 10.
Right.
Together, as a
Right.
collective group.
But I do think that it needs to be, some reference to sexual harassment needs to be included in the separate lessons as well.
So do we want to make a new, instead where it says boys and girls taught separately, there'll be another one before number 10 that says, some heading, and then it says boys and girls taught separately and together? Because that creates sort of a third type. Does that clear it up? Because I get what you're trying to say, like, I'm cool with whatever order it needs to fit in what we're doing.
Right, but what I want to ensure is that there is an opportunity when the girls are by themselves to be able to talk about sexual harassment. So that's what I'm saying. I think I advocate it for being taught when the kids are separated.
Okay.
In 7, 8, 9.
So which one of those lessons would you fit it into? Only because I'm gonna try to.
I don't know, that's
craft-
why, what do you guys think?
So I think we're making this way too complicated.
Yeah.
I think what I would suggest doing is going back to your original proposal of having 6 as it is, throwing some, sexual harassment into number 9, where we talk about risk of sexual activity. We can also talk about sexual harassment in that section, and just kind of simplify it. Because if we start having multiple lessons coming apart, back together,
But that doesn't address the part of having them come back together at the end of the sexual harassment, having a larger, holistic, whole group discussion.
You said about the empathy development.
Isn't that happening in 6 though? We put 6 back as it
I
is?
think that the
together.
bullying and hazing and sexual harassment does lend itself to empathy and talking through it. I think if we introduce it in there, and
When they're together?
when they're together, and I understand what Bernadette was saying about the risks of sexual activity, but I also think that is where you are somewhat. I mean, we've heard the young people tonight talk about how, because they didn't know, I think that's a perfect place to talk about the risks and to talk about the effects of harassment, I mean, we heard about coercion tonight from quite a few folks. So I think it actually fits in very nicely in that. And this is 6th grade.
Right, so keep them together for lesson 6.
Yes.
Just leave it that way.
Yeah.
I would suggest, what I'm gonna do, I'll just tell you, what I'll do then is find a place to kind of mention sexual harassment when they're apart, and I'll work it into the lesson, maybe with 9. Let me just,
Well,
I'll
that could
have to go.
actually be the opening activity. Just tell the teacher for opening activity.
Yeah.
So do you guys have anything to bring forward about that? Like, have you ever felt, because you were a male or a female, that you were,
Right.
ostracized for some reason? That can just be in there, that's what
It can be a
teachers
note.
can do to
Yeah.
start the discussion before they go in.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
So-
they've just covered
Just drop it into 7 and have have a reflection piece
Yeah,
to
at
start
the
out
beginning.
7.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay?
So 7.
It's been a bit of everything,
So
Sarah.
7 is gonna be puberty and, and clean up all of,
Well, and
I'll think of a title.
I was looking, I don't even see, I can't even see the document you're working on.
I think I'm working in my formatted.
Okay.
Right, this is the, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, go in the formatted.
That might clear some things
Is
up.
this the table of contents?
Yes. Yes, because I'm changing.
What folder are you in right now?
So,
Formatted by Sarah, and then grades 6, 7, 8.
so is there a motion
They're not
then to?
complete, but I was just starting to format what Cindy had.
So do we have a motion then to?
Are we going back to that original one?
Yes.
So,
We're going to what Sarah has here.
Yes.
Right, and then we're adding,
But yeah, that needs to add the sexual harassment under 7 for puberty, right?
well, I had
Just
a
the,
I'll
motion
do it, yeah.
to topic sexual harassment to be repeated twice. Once when the boys and girls are separate in lesson 6,
No.
or lesson
No.
9.
now it's the
I
opposite.
think,
Sorry.
let's clear up all those motions, and
Yeah.
they're all gone, and just say the motion is as presented on the screen now, where it's number 6 is bullying, hazing, sexual harassment, then 7, which is boys and girls taught separately, puberty, sexual harassment. Is that correct? All right, so I'll move that.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Sorry, Irma.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
So all we have left, because it's time for
It's 10 o'clock.
to
Yeah.
go,
Uh-huh.
is we need to make a decision about the lessons. And like I said, I know that you guys have read them and you gave me the input. So is there anything else? And we can't do long discussion because we need to close the meeting.
No, and they've been posted, so
Yes.
what is your feedback?
I'm gonna move the lessons as submitted. Do I have
To
a second
accept
for that?
them?
Yeah, to accept them as
I
submitted.
second.
Okay.
I second.
6th grade
The
lessons,
sixth
yeah.
grade lessons.
Discussion?
Any discussion? All in favor?
I like
Oh,
them. I like them. That's
discussion,
fine.
I like them. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bernadette, was you, opposed, abstain?
No,
No.
I approve.
Okay, so that's unanimous.
Thank you so much.
Can we,
For doing all that work, Cindy.
well, and I'm wondering if we can do that with 7, 8.
Can I, actually, before we go, I hate to ask, because I haven't gotten much feedback, and
I
so,
wouldn't do it at 7, 8, because I have there's a lot of questions of what we're including and not including, how much of the high school curriculum is coming out.
that's what I'm saying, I didn't know what to do.
Big decisions we need
I
to make.
couldn't find them, so I
So,
went to look.
I actually looked, it's not in Stephanie's folder, so we got it.
Same issue, though. Were they taken down at all?
But 6 is,
No.
6 is
They're right
done.
here.
6 is good.
Everyone
Four
loves
white
it.
folder, Adams is
6 is
red
done.
lines,
I wanted to
FLC,
cry
7, 8.
with your.
So my question on 7 and 8 is, if I can get some direction and clarity, I can whip through that pretty darn quick. But the issue is, but not tonight, because it's gonna be a lot of, I need folks to weigh in, and so far I don't have anything. I mean, I'm kinda stuck with Ravi here, that I think there's a lot of stuff we wanna pull down and spiral from high school, but I don't know exactly to what extent, so I can either go in and just do that, and
Well,
I
that's
don't
why-
wanna kinda
That's why
breeze through
this is
this.
That's why this is gonna be useful.
So if we're cool with that, I just didn't wanna feel like I was coming in and
No, but
pushing all of
those
7
were
and 8.
my comments primarily, was that we need to refer to our scope and sequence to be able to figure out what's staying and what's going.
Nice.
So do we need a motion for another meeting?
Well, and is that document an approved, the progression document?
But actually, so
I thought it was.
I thought we
Yeah,
approved it
I
last time.
It did,
thought we
but if we wanna go in and look at it real quick, we could do the,
What does numbers mean here?
Well, it was, we approved certain areas were green lined, all of it,
But not with the pretty
and nobody
shading.
saw the finished document.
so it is on the folder, maybe we could do that part real quick, cause that will help then, the actual colored chart, the one that Heidi did with all the gradations in there.
That should actually have an actual,
Yep, so,
That's what we're.
yeah, we should do that.
Everybody loves Heidi's chart.
But seriously, I can't give enough kudos, Heidi, thank you for, It looks really good, and it's visual, and it's also got numbers on there, so analytical side brain can work on it, and it really lays it out.
So I'm sorry, I had to leave early the last meeting, and looking at, so what I understand is, we have this created, and so the staff will take what we have for high school and bring things down into junior high based on, 7th and 8th grade based on this, whatever this is called, the chart.
That's us, we're the one, yeah, so this progression, we still need to then take this and bring it to 7-8, that's us to do that. But there were enough questions in 7-8 that I didn't feel comfortable just making unilateral decisions and bringing it back, saying, all right, here's this thing, and kind of snowballing it through.
That was why Giselle kept sending the emails out. Don't forget, there's 7 and 8 is posted. Can you open the 7 and 8?
But do we need to approve this?
We should approve this, because it's been,
Okay, I'll make a
And it's
motion to approve.
We haven't approved this finally.
we haven't done a final approval on it yet.
So we'll move in second and then
Well, can we-
discuss.
Could we just see if there's a key to it? I didn't see the key.
There's not a key. That's what yeah.
So what was the thought process of not including anything about gender in the 7th and 8th grade curriculum? That's when things are gonna start. I mean, it obviously starts in preschool. I mean, one of my daughter's best friends wore dresses going in preschool more than she did, and I'm not sure if he's trans or not. You know, they're all 7 years old now, but this is something that starts, quite early on, and by the time they're in junior high, the bullying's already going on.
Right.
All the issues are happening. For them not to have the language and vocabulary in place, is doing our students a disservice.
I agree, we just didn't have the
Right.
votes for it last time, so if we do,
There's an NA on gender in the 7th and 8th grade curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
so I would be completely agreeable to that. I agree with you, Ravi. We weren't there last time we did this. I think after hearing, especially from our students tonight, that makes sense to me to have, again, it's always age appropriate. I think we need to always go back in and make sure we're talking, everything is at an age appropriate level, but awareness of self, awareness of one's own gender and gender in others is happening before middle school, so why are we ignoring it in 7th and 8th grade at a minimum? So I would like to include it.
So, I mean, there's a motion and a second on the floor. I would do an amendment to the original motion and change gender on 7th and 8th grade curriculum to either a 4 or a 5.
Was there a motion on this one?
I think someone had moved and someone seconded to approve this.
Yes, but,
It didn't follow through.
oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay, I didn't even know there was a
Do
motion.
we need a motion to go beyond 10? It's 10:10.
Oh, do we have a motion to extend our meetings?
I'll move to extend so we can finish this document to give direction to the
second.
rest of the curriculum. And I'd also move to include that time to talk about kind of the future of our curriculum, or of our committee, and kind of what we're moving steps forward, so that Dr. Trio has the direction, and we can hopefully,
I'll second that.
Okay,
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries. So,
So there was a motion to approve the scope and sequence, but it didn't get seconded and it didn't get voted on.
Yep.
Right.
We want to do an amendment.
well, there's no amendment needed now. I make a motion, then a primary motion to change this to include gender in the 7th and 8th grade curriculum.
and I will second that.
No.
Yeah, now, so any discussion on that?
So are we imagining, I would advocate for that as well, and are we essentially looking at keeping what we say in high school and bringing that down to 6, 7, 8? Or modifying it? I mean, it's pretty,
Well, to be blunt, I would argue what we created in high school was the 7th and 8th grade version of things.
well, that's what I'm saying.
I
It's
think
pretty basic.
I think our
so-
high school version of what we created is really watered down, and I'm not proud of that paragraph of that objective section.
Right. It is watered down. I have to say that I feel comfortable with us introducing it for it to be consistent with that. And I agree. And like you said in your comments, this is not perfect.
but it's a starting point in.
It's better than it was before, it's better than nothing.
So gradual step, so, and,
Once we get it started, then next year, the student may end up being charged with coming back and training and, changing something.
so just in terms of direction, because I have to, again, I'm gonna agree with Ravi that what we have in high school is not the strongest and I think best, but it's better. It's a good step, and it's a first step. So in terms of direction for me in creating 7th and 8th, because that was his motion, was to have that, how would you gradate that? 1 is the lightest shade of color, 5 is like the super dark color in there, like we're super focused on it.
What does that mean to our developers?
From stronger, it's from strongest.
It tells me how strongly I'm going to emphasize that. How much am I going to take from the high school language and bring down, or how much am I going to soften that already softened language up?
So
But Heidi
one's an
wanted-
introduction.
Yeah.
One's introduction.
Yeah.
And so we
And you
know
just
it's.
touch upon it
So what is it?
as opposed to a
Heidi
5.
wanted to say something. Right.
Emphasized for 5, I don't know if that's the right term.
Right.
I'm not the Kate.
I mean, so if I were looking at it, I would maybe think, is this if you want to think just in terms of core concept or a core element to that grade level, is one way to maybe think about it. Is this emphasized or just introduced or not touched on at all? And then that scale between 1 to 5. Does that help understand? Like,
Introduce is fine. I mean, this is the first time, especially if this is the first time that we're doing any kind of, curriculum-based, medically accurate, way of talking about these issues with the vocabulary and language. And what we create in the high school curriculum really is an introduction.
And without opening back up 6, because I heard Cheryl say that she was thinking 6, 7, 8, but your motion was just for grades 7 and 8, which are the outstanding. So do we just kind of leave it to 7 and 8 right now?
I think to
I
get
would-
this through, I don't think that's ideal, but I
Yeah.
think to get this through, I think that gives you some passage.
So can we call it since we're a 2? Because they've had.
And this is for 7th and 8th, though. This
Yeah.
is not for 6th.
It's not for 6th grade. We're not gonna, so if we just leave it for 7, 8 and call it a 2, that kind of gives me some clarity of direction, that I'll take the language we have from the high school and make it a little more introductory, which again, I know it's already introductory basics, but at least it's better than nothing. Is that okay?
Support that, yeah.
Okay.
So the motion on table then is
Yeah, for 2?
6, 7, and 8, I have a 2.
So I guess if we're looking for it to be medically accurate and scientific, it just falls back on what science and what medically accurate. And there was a lot of different things in the room, and there's contradicting.
So, go ahead.
So that's what I have a problem with, so.
Charlotte, do you have the paperwork that was
Let's not confuse the
left by
science
Dr.
for the
Kurtzman?
science. There was not a lot of things in a room. What is scientifically, medically accurate is what every major medical organization has spoken on this issue. And so we can keep on talking about what's science and what's not science, but we know what science is. We know what science is based on what every major medical organization, every major group of physicians, every major group of psychologists has looked at this issue and has said the same thing. And that is what we are trying to get in this curriculum. That is what medically accurate, scientifically accurate information is.
And so the first term was sexuality, correct? And it was about the biology.
Yeah,
No, first term was sex, biological sex,
Right.
genetic sex, gender, sexuality.
Okay.
Are the 3 different concepts. That is how medical students are being taught this, because that is a medically accurate way of teaching this
So
information.
what's the definition for sex? That
So the sex was divided into biological sex and genetic sex.
Right.
Gender, if you do it in the way we teach in medical school and in physician groups, we talk about gender identity versus gender expression. And we
Right.
talk about sexual orientation, sexual behavior, sexual identity.
So I'm looking at the 3 terms that we used in high school. And the one is biology. So can we agree that that's science? X.
X, X, Y, and then
The term was
variations.
sex, yeah, yeah.
That's,
Is that scientifically accurate for you, Bernadette?
As far as XX and XY, and then it also had variations.
Well, there are. Unfortunately, there are permutations.
They're mutations,
Yeah,
not
but-
actually a separate.
But when you're
separate
talking about XY,
category.
that's not necessarily a genetic mutation, it's the way that the chromosomes came together and it expressed itself.
Either chromosomal differences, like XO is Turner syndrome, XXY is Klinefelter syndrome. Those are, well established. People are getting their names on it because that's what we do in medicine.
you can put names on things.
Anonymous names of everything.
So I guess maybe you can help me understand. So is it a deviation Is it a mutation? Is it a separate category all by itself? Help me understand.
I would call it a variation on genetic sex. Just like there's variation on biological sex in terms of anatomy, we have, when people are born, most people are born with a penis or vagina. Sometimes there's clitoromegaly and other issues that happen. If someone who has an XX chromosome, for example, has androgen exposure in utero because of just the way, their adrenal glands and other things are working, or because of some other issues, then there's going to be some intersex, and that's where intersex comes into play in terms of the anatomical sex. So that's why we have genetic sex, we have anatomical sex, and those are the two different concepts of sex.
Okay, but we're not talking that in depth.
Right,
in
we're not
this,
teaching a medical school class, right?
Right,
We're not.
right.
We're just in vocabulary and concepts.
But that is, or at least it was in my master's physiology of exercise and my anatomy physiology classes, all of that was covered. That was only in 1982, so I think it was kind of already figured out by then. So what part of that science is a concern for you, Bernadette?
I feel it's introduced in a very confusing time, and that's some of that confusion. If you guys want to vote to have it in there, go ahead. And I could abstain or vote against it. You guys have the majority, so go ahead.
But the way it's phrased, you feel that that's confusing to say that there is this biology that
Well, and
we
maybe
are.
that's where it belongs, in biology,
Well, it does come up in biology, but for the purposes of what you're doing here.
Right.
What would you suggest, Bernadette?
I just think there is just conflicting views on it, so I just, to take a hard line, and say, this is it, I guess I'm just
Well, I think
concerned
though,
that way.
aren't you guys are taking the medical?
Right. We're not taking a hard line and doing all the different variations and all that.
Right, this is-
We're saying, here's a category. And it's powerful for a kid to say, oh, wait, this is how I fit into this category.
Can I jump in real quick? So the high school actually says, when you go down underneath 6A, says, as you enter adolescence, the importance of having a personal primary care physician. We're talking about human beings that have already well past the entered stage. So middle school is the stage where you're entering this sort of development. So if we go back and just take this as the 3 points that we have there, the A, B, and C under 5, I know that, again, I don't want to make it feel like there's just, it's majority kind of ramming it through, but I have to respect the science behind it, and I think there's a way to make these 3 points here age appropriate for 7th and 8th grade. Because I wouldn't include stuff at that grade, I wouldn't include stereotypes, archetypes, and all this sociocultural discussion.
Right.
But
Okay,
I might,
good, because that would.
that's too much for a 7th grader probably to go through
my head would
archetypal
explode if
constructs.
I were teaching
Too much
that.
for a 40-year-old.
Yeah, seriously.
Archetypes. and all these different-
I will give a lesson on archetypes outside of this. Once we're all done, I will take us out to dinner and we'll talk
Gotten a lot of
archetypes.
flack for that,
I have.
sir.
Okay.
But I can, if I have a clear direction about maybe making this a 3. If we're calling this a 5 in the high school, which is what the current progression shows,
Yeah.
if I make it a 3, I can easily use that.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I can bring it back
think
to
a
a
3 is
3.
appropriate.
Okay.
Is that okay? So
So do you have a motion?
we have a motion and a
I
second.
move that
that's-
we, yeah,
Oh, it was already moved and.
we vote
So I'm
on
in my,
it.
move, on my
Somebody
motion
call
to
the
make it a
question.
3.
So, well, I don't,
Somebody call the question.
no more discussion, so I will go ahead and actually just take the vote on this one. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And then Bernadette, 1 opposed, Bernadette. Okay?
Yeah,
Motion,
because just
motion
for-
carries 5-1.
Parents had said, just leave that out and let us handle that, so I'm just trying to incorporate what they said tonight.
Okay, absolutely, fair enough, thank you. So back to the progression, were there other aspects to it that we want to look at? Bearing in mind, again, not to open up a longer discussion, I did have a moment of clarity in some of the discussions I've been having with community members and other folks. As long as we're making sure that we talk about consent and making sure that that's, when we talk about boundaries and other things, that that's also inclusive of the consent conversation. Because if you look here where it says personal safety, line 41, consent, it's got a NA, and doesn't start until grade 6 at a 1. But really, we are talking about consent, but not sexual consent. We're talking about consent as a
That's true.
human
Right.
approach.
Autonomy.
Yeah, autonomy.
Body
Body
Relationships,
autonomy.
right.
Right.
But I think there will be some level of objection if people open this up and see that NA 1-1. So could we maybe make all of those NAs with consent just a 1? Because that really is, we are talking about consent.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right.
Without formally talking about it.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I'll-
I move that we change consent over to a 1 or introductory at the lower grades.
Yes.
At 4 and 5.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
You want me to?
I want everyone to speak, so.
My discussion point is, consent is to say yes to something, saying yes to something.
Yes.
Or no.
Or no.
No, it's.
I do not consent to that.
Well,
would be
you're right. The
not
flip side
consent.
is refusal.
Yeah.
Refusal, okay.
Right.
So I'm all in favor of teaching refusal skills and communication on how to say no, but to me, consent says yes. And if you're saying consent in these lower grades, how do they consent to?
So the way I feel is that as you teach refusal skills, you say you have the right to offer consent or to consent, but we're teaching you this. And so it's not that we're teaching them to do it, but we want them to know that they're empowered to do it.
2 points. I mean, we heard the young man from Pueblo who said that he actually, I don't know if anybody else caught it, my ears perked up when he said, I chose not to have sex, but the way this curriculum was presented was problematic. So there are kids, I think,
But see,
I don't
but
think,
if
I don't
you're
think saying
teaching-
consent teaches kids to have sex. I think it teaches them how to, again,
It's
I
okay.
just
Say-
think the
say-
language is
yeah.
confusing, because consent is to say yes to something.
What if we-
we're teaching refusal skills, so what that gentleman, because I heard that too, and that, I felt like, oh, this poor kid did not have the tools to how to communicate what his desire, or what what he wanted, right? And so that's part of communication, that's part of refusal skills. I don't think it's consent.
Well, I think you have a choice to consent or not to consent. No, I mean, it's a choice that we're teaching kids to make, that you have your own boundaries and you need to feel comfortable with your boundaries.
But should we be
Robbie?
saying to, oh, go ahead, Robbie.
I think the most important thing about consent is that it's not implied.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a concept that we're understanding more in our society, that consent is not implied, and the most important thing that we're teaching in consent is that you need to give your consent. Your consent's not implied, you're allowed to not withhold your consent, and I think that concept is right for all the audiences, and it's gonna get to the point that we're trying to get to for the younger audiences.
And
'Cause this
it's
is-
right for a kinder.
Mhm. This is hugging and touching and playing with hair and other tactile things that
Well,
kids do.
When I teach my daughter, good and bad touch, like, it's about consent, like,
Mhm.
It's about, what you can and can't consent to and what's not appropriate. We don't use the C word, we don't use the consent word with my daughter, but
Right, so what, we probably should use terms that make sense, that
Well,
age,
I
that
think-
age appropriate.
We're not saying we're gonna
This
use
is
the
about
term, but if,
Instructional sequence.
yeah, it's a
It's under the
concept of concept.
right, if we're going to do decision-making with them out of 5, is the only decision we are going to offer them is to always say no to everything? Or do we need to allow them to understand that there's a flip side to no, but we're teaching them how to make the decisions and.
That's what Representative Orr said, was about the
Healthy
critical
boundaries
thinking.
and things like that. So healthy
Right.
boundaries, you say yes and you say no. There's boundaries and.
Right.
You say yes to and things. So in my mind, those are the skills. But if you want to put those under consent, go ahead. I mean, I guess I just, the nuances, I guess, in the actual word itself and the definition is what I'm having trouble with.
Well, can we back up and look at refusal skills under 4th grade, and let's agree that then, if we're teaching that, let's give that
At the
5
top,
up there in
yeah.
4th grade. That's critically important.
Thank you.
And then,
I'm really not trying to be difficult.
no,
I'm just
but
trying to share.
but that's what
the-
you're saying,
the
Bernard. I'm
verbiage.
honoring what you're saying. Let's give it a 5 in 4th grade. Absolutely, that'll address it there. And then, yeah, and
I
not to
just-
muddy the waters, but can we somehow just say for 4th and 5th grade, can we talk about body autonomy in there with the consent. It may not have to be on the chart, but I do think body autonomy is a part of that.
So I think I maybe have something that may be friendly to Cindy's.
We gotta.
So my friendly to Cindy's is a motion. I will move that under refusal skills for grade 4, we make that a 5. Under consent, under personal safety, we make that consent / body autonomy, and we keep it 11155. That covers everybody what they're saying. Make sure we get body autonomy in there. We have the consent. We have refusal skills.
Thank you.
Is that fit? Is that a friendly amendment?
I was having a hard time writing those lesson plans when
Yes.
we're talking about consenting, but we're not talking about boundaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
necessary.
Clarify, because there's consent 2 times.
There
on here.
is,
So
yes.
there's consent in sex and sexuality, and there's consent in personal safety.
Yes. So I'm talking about the personal safety consent / body autonomy.
Yes.
All right, that's.
Yes,
Mhm.
Right.
Is that okay?
Right.
absolutely.
'Cause-
Yeah, that was
Is
actually
for
what,
that where you were confused?
Yes.
Okay.
that's why we placed it in 2
Yeah.
places, because of the appropriateness.
Right. So we're not teaching sexual consent to a 4th grader. That's absolutely inappropriate. But
Yeah, I like the body autonomy.
So under
body
personal
auto-
sety, it's gonna be consent
/ body autonomy.
Okay.
Irma, did you get the full motion?
I'm actually recording the whole.
Oh, beautiful. That's how I love it. I will say it one more time slowly just so we can hear. So refusal skills under grade 4 becomes a 5 instead of NA. Under personal safety, consent becomes consent / body autonomy, and then the NAs at grade 4 and 5 go to 1s, and then grade 6 also stays a 1, and then we keep a 5 and a 5 at 7, 8, and high school. So,
You'll put that online?
It's
so
all
we
recorded, it's
know it,
beautiful.
So that as yeah.
all right, so I think we've had enough discussion on this. Robbie's back. All those in,
No, we got,
we're good. Do you want to, let me repeat it just so we can hear you. So refusal skills under grade 4 will go from an NA to a 5. And then under personal safety, consent becomes consent / body autonomy. And the NA at grades 4, 5 become 1, at grade 6 stays a 1, and 7, 8 high school stay a 5.
All right.
So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
8.
Now we need to approve the entire document.
Yeah, so all right. No. We still have an approval on the full progression as presented with those changes. Are there any other changes we'd want to make to it?
We need a key.
We need a key.
Oh, a key.
Key for color and for numbers.
introduction.
Do we just do the beginning and scale, or do we come up with terms?
Introduction to.
I'm trying to think if
emphasize.
there's a different term. We change this in education all the time. Is emphasize becoming something else right now?
We don't care.
Yeah.
I stopped learning new terminology about 25 years ago, because it's BS. I like the.
Can we say focus?
Can you just say highly emphasized or?
Yeah, introduced and then highly emphasized.
Yeah, I think I'm good with that. I think people can figure out the in-between. I think it's good.
It's a
Everybody knows a good liker.
We have educators.
So we have a motion for the, do we need to move on the key or just the whole thing? We have the key included? Everybody knows the key?
Key.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a motion on the progression as presented?
I move.
All right, we got a
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Or can you still send that out to us, though?
Well,
Like,
we,
when
is
we're
it
so
the
when
evidence
we're
or?
looking at 7th and 8th,
Mhm.
we have it as a guide.
It's in the Google Docs.
Yeah, it's-
There's a
Right.
folder called progression.
Yep, it's there.
Well, but with the edits, oh yeah, it edits.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, Heidi's gonna, yeah, she's
Yeah, once she goes back and listens to all this, like, you get to relive this another time.
So let's see if we can get.
All right, so we're done with this piece of the progression.
Right.
I understand that we've already approved the 6th grade curriculum, 4 and 5 is approved, high school is approved. The only thing left to be approved is 7, 8.
There's not approved. 4 and 5.
Didn't we approve it when we,
No,
months ago?
There's five lessons in 4th grade that are approved, but the rest,
Okay.
majority of the rest is not.
So we have 4 and 5 left to do, we have 7 and 8 left to do. This is,
Cindy's committed.
next week everyone's off because it's a holiday for the district all week.
But we have 6th grade
And
and we
we-
have high school.
Right.
Which is a good focus,
So
but
would we ask Dr. Trier to take to the board, like, the 6th grade and high school, at least to start off with, so we can start getting implemented for the next academic year?
can we invite
Do you
Dr.
want
Trujillo
us
to?
to not even move
join
forward
us?
unless, like, what do you prefer from us?
So I would prefer that the board be presented with a finished product. I think it's easier for them to because it is such a difficult issue for them. It's a very challenging issue for any school board. So if they're going to take the issue on, they would
They need
prefer
the whole
to take it
thing.
on all at once.
Okay.
So we
Instead,
have,
you know, they go through it
Piecemeal.
at 6, only to have to turn around and do it again for remaining grade levels. So I would, obviously, not providing direction.
Yeah.
For advocating for my team, the 5, probably hearing where you're at, it might be good for me to move it off of July 9th. Give you a little bit more time. We can probably shoot for either July 23rd or the first meeting in August, depending on what your preference is.
My question, how does that change implementation for school year 1920?
I think if we went July 23rd, we can still have a pretty.
because
my-
this is later into the semester when it's
Yeah.
done. It's not
Yeah,
at the beginning.
because 4 through 7, 8, what happened in the springtime.
Right.
Right.
Where high school would only happen in the kids who take both in the first semester.
Right. So my only concern then we also still have the materials component to go through with this and make sure that the material selection folks know what we're looking at when we're looking at these lessons and as roadmaps. So
But the
and-
adoption will take a long process, longer than this.
right.
Amazingly. So I think that teachers are very innovative. They have their own
Mhm.
materials, and we have materials that have already been adopted. So some of those can be used to implement it. It may not be what the kids get for second semester after we actually go out for adoption, but it gives us something to work with. Right now, teachers are not really doing anything because
Right.
they're just stuck there.
Well, I guess
When do your leadership team, when do they need it before a 23rd, a July 23rd?
So because this is like a second semester
Right.
unit of study, we have some time.
Right.
I think the toughest part of this is gonna be the initial vote for a curriculum.
Right.
I don't think anybody underestimates how tough that's going to be.
Right.
Our 5 elected officials. I think the less intensive process is the curricular review and adoption. That's just length of time. That's a 60-day for a primary textbook. You as a committee can provide direction not to include a primary textbook and opt for curricular materials. Curricular materials, if you wanted to provide direction for the district to look at a series of curricular materials, those are shorter 10-day to 15-day review processes.
Oh, I got that covered then.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
We're good. So yeah, I just want to make sure because we did hear a little bit tonight about some of the outdated, not just VHS, but just some of the stuff is definitely better left in the 1980s.
I've started putting some suggestions in, but yeah, we've
Smart.
been looking. So my concern is, if we went with the July 23rd date, I understand that your leadership team needs to look at it, right, before you.
She's talking about bringing it to ALT.
Yeah, there's that whole
Yeah.
process.
Bless you.
Okay,
Dr.
because I'm
Trujillo?
about to say I'll write,
Dr.
Yeah.
Trujillo, so if it's not going for second semester implementation,
Right.
23rd might be just too much of, there's no point to go to 23rd. We can push this into August without inhibiting the implementation in second semester.
Correct, yeah, your curricular work is ready to be implemented upon your approval and recommendation to the board and the board's approval. The actual implementation at the classroom level, the speed to which that takes place is determined by the curricular resources. If it's a textbook, if you're looking at a primary text, which doesn't sound like you are.
No.
And that's not a challenge because it sounds like you'll be considering curricular resources approved fairly quickly through a shorter review time, which that puts us in line for a pretty solid second semester.
And you
But,
want to
second
give
se-
teachers time to learn the
Right.
changes in the
But that-
curriculum and give the professional development time.
Is there any health class taught first semester at a high school?
yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So we would be impacting those first semester health classes, would not be getting this particular curriculum. They would be stuck with the old one. If we did the 23rd of July, we could, in theory, get it ready for them to, but that's still, I mean, school's starting the week after.
But it's still enough time when if they're taking health health is gonna last until
December.
Right.
Okay.
So-
We could look at a second quarter implementation
Mhm.
for the first semester.
Right.
Right.
There we go. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you have your whole second semester, to be able.
So, Ravi, would you prefer August
Requiring
then?
in July 23rd, or can we get it into the second quarter if we do it in August? And get
I
some-
think your window is July 23rd, and then I wouldn't go any later than the first board meeting in August.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna be relying on those professional development days.
Yes.
In August, September and October to get the health teachers ready. Second quarter,
When the community's been told 3 times that this will be on the board agenda, so I want to make sure that they don't feel like we're just keep moving it so that they lose steam or interest, because we want them to see this transparent process. So if we,
you know, we treat this like any other agenda item. We move agenda items all the time.
right,
Yeah.
And it's subject to the committee's work and the board's readiness to review the item. The board has made it very clear they don't want to be deemed ready to review the item. So their board-appointed committee have a recommended product.
Okay.
okay,
That's good to
that's
know.
good.
So the
Thank
first-
you.
The board has your product in terms of because they want you to have time.
So Dr. Hia, the first Tuesday of August is August 6th. And
So
so,
the first meeting scheduled for August 13th.
Yep.
August 13th is the first board.
first meeting, and
Is
that's
that-
enough time to get them, it gives us 2 months before fall break and then to implement, that's enough time, the 2 months?
That's enough time.
Okay, so can we shoot for like an August 1st date to get it to your team? You need, how much time do you need to review this?
So I would say that our board members for an August 13th, for something of this scope, would like to have 2 weeks. So
Okay.
August 1st would be great, that I can get them the curriculum in its entirety, the progression. They're gonna wanna see the science package. And I think getting that to them, August 1st, and giving them a good 2 weeks to review. I think would put us in line. By putting them in a better position to vote. That also gives you as a committee more time, not only work, but if you feel that you wanted another event like this, it would be, of course, at your disposal to be able to put something like that together.
Or
You
glutton
know,
for punishment.
It's a lot of work, but if there was if the board's direction was a curricular review, there's currently no policy that requires the board to put curriculum and courses out for public review. Policy requires curricular resources and textbooks out for public review. But the board can opt at any time, as they did with Philosophy 101. They provided a specific direction for transparency that Philosophy 101 go out for public review. They could do that. If they choose to do that, they may call for a public hearing, at which case it's not you anymore. They'll have to sit up and have the audience come in. So I think that would be more in their purview.
And I can tell you, when schools are teaching this and they send out the permission slips, parents get 30 days at the school site to come in and do those materials and ask questions, and they host parent meetings.
Would the district be able to get this online in enough time for the health class, for second quarter health class, for them to be able to review it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this being a second quarter unit, I think 9 weeks is really,
That's very
I think we're gonna be okay on that.
Okay, because then that now makes it accessible to everyone, really.
Yeah, it also, when it passes to the board's territory, I've seen them move quick on things, and then I've seen them really struggle. And if they call for an extended review of the curriculum out over 30 or 45 days, and then they want some study sessions, and the board can't get to a majority opinion, we're eating into that time that we
Right.
need for PD
Right,
to get health teachers ready for second quarter.
right.
Which will kick off after fall break. So if at the board level, we're stretching into some study sessions, calling for an open curriculum that goes out for 45 days, and then they want to do a hearing, then we're now, we're compromised.
Right.
In terms of being able to order.
Okay.
So backing that timeline up, it sounds like if we want to give the 2 weeks, that August 1st is sort of our deadline of saying, as the six of us, we recommend this curriculum to the board, what would that look like for us, knowing that we still have 4
Okay, so
and 5 plus 7 and 8?
I'm going to jump in and say that I am willing to do the 4th and 5th grade lesson plans. You're not recording this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm willing
You're on the
to do
hook
that.
now. You're there now.
In that water bottle.
There's water in here. I don't drink, so.
You're on video too.
Oh, just don't let my mom see what I just said.
It's not the first time it's been said, I'm sure.
I'm willing to do that, but then we post it, and I have a problem getting my stuff into Google Docs, so I'm having to go through Giselle and Sarah, they're doing it. Then, if we could meet by the 15th of July to okay those, how long will it take for you to do the 7th and 8th grade?
Well, the July 9th is open now. I won't be here.
Yes, it is. I have this job. Well, it actually happens in August, so
I won't be available the 9th.
I won't be here on the 9th either.
Yeah,
But
if we can.
it will not take me that long. The work isn't that daunting for me. It's just me not wanting to.
Why don't you give Irma
The whole week is off,
the
or-
dates? We can check with Giselle and Ms. Hewitt.
Is that a whole week out for people, or people here on the 10th, for example?
I'm just
I
not
don't know
available the
if
night of the 9th.
I can't get it done by the 10th.
Okay.
I've got a March and 4th of
Can-
July
Can we
and
get
stuff.
7, 8 done by the 10th?
Yeah, but I'd want. You said you're not going to be able to meet, right? I mean, I can get it done and put up pretty.
I'm not here that week. That's
Right.
the one week I'm leaving for
That
vacation.
week's
8th to
gone,
the
so
12th?
the 15th is
The
what we're
17th to
looking at.
Okay.
So do you have another date?
I'm available the 15th.
Well, the 15th is good for me.
Yeah, if we keep it, yeah, if we keep it to the, what time?
Okay, but I'm saying, I need you to look at it, review it. I'm not willing to do an hour meeting and get it done.
Right.
Because we just proved we can do it.
I have a meeting with my boss that afternoon into the early evening on the 15th, but I can get here.
Do a morning, or do you want to do it on the 16th? I don't care.
I'm down for the 15th if we just do it after 6 p.m., but I know that keeps it late.
That's a little.
What
Yeah.
about in the morning?
I can't, we
Something
also,
they can
we
do
have,
earlier.
that's NTO for my district, so I have a couple things I'm doing at NTO.
Okay, what about the next day?
16th, I can do it early afternoon. I can start and go late.
I can do all of the 16th.
Yep, I got 16th wide open.
Me too.
Okay, if we can do afternoon, that'd be good, because I'll get mom to the heart doctor in the morning.
Okay.
Okay.
So what do we say, 3? And see if
I
that,
think 3 o'clock would be a good time. Our goal is to get through the 4th and 5th edits that she has made, Cindy's made, and then start hitting the 7 and 8 curriculum as well.
okay?
Should we go from like the 3 to like 9 p.m. and just try to crank out as much as we can that
I'm
night?
always in favor of leaving the longer time on the agenda, but I bear in mind that we have district staff, and I know I don't want to commit their resources.
I'm gonna commit to only 2 hours at the most.
So 3 to 5.
Right. We can do it, so we just need to do it. We need to quit, we need to get off of the staff to let them have
So,
some.
so are you talking about like a meeting where we
And we okay 4th, 5th,
Yeah.
7th, and 8th.
Do the full approval mode.
Save the voice.
Approve all the lessons and,
Because
And we could say- we can
45
make-
minutes to approve this. Like, we're not gonna get through 7 and 8 in an hour. Like, that's gonna be, like,
right,
it's gonna
but
take a
we
while to
just-
go through it.
we just did 6.
Like
Well,
that.
I think we could do the lower grades quickly,
Right.
and.
But I think 7 and 8 will take some more time, because we're getting to the issues of like, what are we talking about? in
When?
terms of
But if I have your
sexual-
input, Cindy, beforehand, and if you have to leave after that 2 hours because you have put in 3.5 years and
Do we have
it
to
keeps
do it?
dragging.
It only feels like 15.
Yeah.
But, no. Yeah, that, and I can stretch, but I just don't want us to stretch out every word.
No, no.
I'm just,
Okay.
I think, and if we could even add in what our issues are so people can come prepared to speak to them.
So the goal is everyone's prepared and has looked at the documents in Google Docs.
Yes.
And we have our comments and we can just move
So
forward.
I'll have my stuff up at least the week before,
Exactly.
but as soon as possible.
The 16th, July 16th.
We'll reach out to Giselle.
See if she's available.
That's gonna work with her schedule. I think so.
I can do the
It sounds
17th at the
like
same
her-
time too, if that doesn't work.
Sounds like she doesn't go until the end of the month.
And
So-
we did say 3 to 5, right?
3 to
That's our
5.
goal, and I agree with you, Cindy.
And
And you
here,
gotta be ready.
right,
Right, so we all get that. We'll
Yes.
do what it takes there. And if it doesn't work with Giselle, because I also know there's a cost associated with that, that we can,
but we got
July
you.
1st is a
New-
new,
oh.
a new,
yeah,
Budget.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
new budget year.
fiscal year,
yeah,
yep.
so it's not like we're squeezing.
No, but I want to be cognizant while we're saying that. I would like Dr. Trujillo to hear that the staff has been wonderful, and we know that we put a lot of strain and pressure on the district to get this through, so
But
we
when
thank the
turn off
team.
the video, we're gonna say a lot of different things.
Well, I understand that Charlotte, you're in a different role and you won't be with us for the rest of the, of work.
I have to talk.
We can talk later.
Actually, I did ask Charlotte to finish out.
Okay.
Big.
Great, thank you.